The night Elara Whitmore became a duchess, her husband handed her a single command: give him an heir, then disappear. No affection, no partnership, just cold duty wrapped in silk and title. She stood in that freezing bedroom, wedding dress still clinging to her skin, and realized she'd been sold into a beautiful prison. But Elara wasn't the kind of woman who vanished quietly. If Rowan Halridge wanted her gone, he'd have to watch her become everything he feared most: a force he couldn't ignore, couldn't control, and couldn't forget. If you're curious how a woman turned rejection into power, stick with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The carriage wheels crunched over gravel, each rotation pulling Elara further from the only life she'd ever known. She pressed her gloved hand against the window, watching her family's estate shrink into the distance until it became nothing more than a dark smudge against the twilight sky. Gone. All of it. Her mother's garden, her father's study, the room where she'd spent countless nights reading by candlelight, dreaming of a future that looked nothing like this. You're quiet. Elara turned. Rowan sat across from her, perfectly composed in his wedding attire, dark hair swept back, jaw set like he was heading into a business negotiation rather than a marriage, which, she supposed, he was. I'm observing, she said. Observing what? How a man looks when he's already regretting his choices. His eyes flicked to hers, sharp and gray as winter steel. For a moment something passed between them, surprise maybe, or irritation. Then his expression smoothed back into indifference. I don't regret choices I didn't make. Ah. Elara settled back against the cushioned seat. So this was your father's arrangement. Does it matter? I suppose not. Either way, here we are. Rowan's gaze lingered on her face, assessing. She'd caught him doing that throughout the ceremony, studying her like she was a horse he'd purchased sight unseen, checking for defects, measuring value. It made her skin crawl. You're younger than I expected, he said finally. 22 is hardly a child. It's young enough. For what? Bearing heirs. I believe women have managed that at my age for centuries. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, definitely. But also something else. A hint of reluctant respect, perhaps, or just surprise that she'd actually respond with her own thoughts instead of demure agreement. You're sharp-tongued, he said. Would you prefer I simper? I'd prefer you understand the nature of this arrangement. Elara's heart kicked against her ribs, but she kept her voice level. I understand perfectly. Your family needed money. Mine needed status. We're a transaction, not a romance. Good. Rowan looked away, out his own window. Then we'll have no misunderstandings. The carriage fell silent after that. Elara watched the landscape change as they traveled, rolling hills giving way to dense forest, then opening up again to reveal Halridge Manor in the distance. Even in the fading light, it was stunning. A sprawling estate of pale stone and soaring towers, windows glowing warm against the coming dark. It looked like something from a fairy tale. She'd heard stories about this place, about the Halridge family's old power, their influence in court, the way dukes and earls bent to accommodate them, about how that power had been slowly eroding for years, debts mounting, investments failing, until Rowan's father had made the desperate choice to marry his son off to the highest bidder. Enter the Whitmores. New money. Her father had built an empire in manufacturing and trade, unglamorous, profitable, and completely lacking in aristocratic pedigree. He'd been trying to buy his way into noble circles for years. Rowan's family needed cash. Elara's father needed a title. And she? She was the currency that sealed the deal. The carriage rolled to a stop. Servants appeared immediately, opening doors, lowering steps, murmuring welcomes. Rowan exited first, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. He didn't offer his hand to help her down. Elara descended on her own, lifting her skirts carefully. Her wedding dress, an elaborate confection of ivory silk and Belgian lace that had taken 3 seamstresses 6 weeks to create, suddenly felt ridiculous. Overdone. Her mother had insisted on every detail, determined that her daughter would look like she belonged among the nobility. But standing here, watching Rowan stride toward the manor without a backward glance, Elara understood the truth. No amount of expensive fabric would make her belong. She was an intruder in a world that didn't want her. Your Grace? Elara turned. An elderly woman stood nearby, her gray hair pulled back severely, her dress the dark uniform of a head housekeeper. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Elara caught the flicker of assessment in her eyes. Judgment, maybe. Or just curiosity. I'm Mrs. Brennan, the woman said. I manage the household. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your rooms. My rooms? Elara glanced toward where Rowan had disappeared into the manor. Shouldn't I? His Grace has separate quarters, Mrs. Brennan said smoothly. The master and mistress suites are adjoining, of course, but each maintains their own space. It's traditional. Traditional. Right. Elara had heard about these arrangements. Noble marriages where husband and wife lived practically separate lives under the same roof, coming together only for public appearances and the necessary business of producing heirs. She'd hoped, foolishly, that hers might be different. Of course, Elara said. Lead the way. They entered through a side door rather than the grand front entrance. Mrs. Brennan explained that the main hall was being prepared for tomorrow's reception, the formal introduction of the new Duchess to local society, and it was easier to avoid the chaos. Elara barely heard her. She was too busy trying to memorize the maze of corridors they traveled through, the turns and staircases and countless closed doors. The manor was enormous. She could get lost here, vanish completely. Maybe that was the point. Her suite, when they finally reached it, was beautiful in the way expensive things often are. Perfectly appointed, carefully decorated, and utterly impersonal. Heavy drapes and deep burgundy framed tall windows. A four-poster bed dominated one wall, its canopy stitched with the Halridge crest. Furniture in dark wood. Paintings of landscapes she didn't recognize, everything immaculate. Nothing that suggested an actual person lived here. Your things arrived this afternoon, Mrs. Brennan said. The maids have unpacked most of it. If you need anything adjusted or moved, just ring. Thank you. Mrs. Brennan moved toward the door, then paused. Dinner will be served in the family dining room at 8. His Grace asked that you join him. Asked. What a polite fiction. I'll be there. After the housekeeper left, Elara stood in the center of her new bedroom and tried to breathe. Her corset suddenly felt too tight, her dress too heavy. The room too large and too small simultaneously, vast enough to echo her isolation, confined enough to feel like a cage. She caught sight of herself in the standing mirror near the wardrobe. The girl looking back wore a duchess's clothing but had Elara Whitmore's face. Dark eyes too large for delicate features, brown hair swept up in an elaborate style that was already starting to slip, skin pale from the day's stress. She looked young, fragile, lost. Elara turned away from the mirror. She'd learned early that crying accomplished nothing. Her father had taught her that, usually right after teaching her something else. How to read a contract, how to spot a bad investment, how to negotiate. He'd raised her like the son he never had, filling her head with business strategy and mathematics, while her mother despaired over her lack of feminine accomplishments. No man wants a wife who thinks like a merchant, her mother had said more than once. Apparently, some men didn't want a wife who thought at all. Elara began removing pins from her hair, letting the heavy mass fall down her back. Her fingers worked automatically while her mind raced ahead, calculating, planning. This was her life now, this cold manner, this indifferent husband, this role she'd been purchased to play. She could rail against it, or she could adapt. She chose adaptation. But adaptation didn't mean acceptance. By the time 8 o'clock arrived, Elara had changed into a simpler dress, deep blue silk, high-necked, appropriate for a private dinner. She'd redone her hair into something less elaborate. She'd rehearsed her expression in the mirror until it showed nothing but calm composure. A maid guided her through more corridors to the family dining room. It was smaller than she'd expected, though still large enough to seat 20 people easily. Tonight, only 2 places were set, one at each end of a table that seemed designed to emphasize distance. Rowan was already there, standing near the fireplace with a glass of what looked like whiskey. He'd changed too, now wearing a simple shirt and vest, his formal coat discarded. It made him look younger, more approachable. Then he turned to look at her, and the ice in his eyes shattered that illusion. "You're prompt," he said. "Is that a criticism?" "An observation." "You make a lot of those." His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "So do you." A servant appeared to pull out her chair. Elara sat, hyper-aware of the vast table between them. Another servant began bringing dishes, soup, bread, some kind of roasted bird she didn't recognize. The meal was elaborate for just 2 people. Everything here seemed elaborate, even the loneliness. They ate in silence for several minutes. Elara focused on her soup, trying to ignore the weight of Rowan's gaze whenever it landed on her. She could feel him studying her again, taking measure. It made her want to snap at him, to demand he stop treating her like an acquisition. But she'd promised herself she would be calm, strategic. "Your family has an interesting history," Rowan said eventually. Elara looked up. "Meaning we have no history at all?" "I didn't say that. You implied it. It's fine. I'm aware my father made his fortune in trade rather than inheriting it from ancestors who murdered the right people centuries ago." Rowan's eyebrows rose. "That's a rather stark view of nobility. Is it inaccurate? Most noble families prefer the term conquest to murder." Was that humor? Elara studied his face, trying to determine if he was mocking her or actually attempting conversation. His expression gave nothing away. "Your father built mills," Rowan continued, "textile manufacturing. Among other things, he's diversified over the years. Smart. He's a practical man. And yet he bought you a title." There it was, the real conversation, the one underneath the polite observations. Elara set down her spoon carefully. "He bought me a husband. The title was incidental." "Was it? Does it matter what my father wanted? We're the ones who ended up married." Rowan leaned back in his chair, still watching her with those sharp gray eyes. "Tell me something, Elara. Did you want this?" The question caught her off guard. It was the first time he'd used her given name, the first time he'd asked her anything that felt remotely personal. "What I wanted was irrelevant," she said. "That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters." Elara met his gaze steadily. "I'm here. You're here. We made vows. Whether either of us wanted them is beside the point now." Something shifted in Rowan's expression. Not warmth exactly, but a subtle easing of tension. "You're pragmatic. I'm realistic. There's a difference?" Pragmatism suggests I'm making the best of a bad situation. Realism acknowledges that the situation is what it is, regardless of whether it's good or bad. And which is this? Our marriage? Elara picked up her wine glass, taking a slow sip to buy herself time. The wine was excellent, rich and smooth, probably worth more than everything she was wearing. "I don't know yet," she said finally. "Ask me again in a year." Rowan actually smiled at that. A small smile, barely there, but genuine. It transformed his face completely, softening the hard edges, making him look almost boyish. It disappeared quickly, locked away behind his usual reserve, but Elara had seen it. Proof that somewhere under all that ice was an actual human being. They finished dinner with lighter conversation, questions about her journey, comments about the weather, safe topics that revealed nothing. Servants cleared dishes and brought dessert. Through it all, Elara played her part perfectly. The well-bred wife, pleasant and undemanding, asking appropriate questions and giving appropriate responses. It exhausted her. When the meal finally ended, Rowan stood. "I have work to attend to. I'll be in my study." "Of course." Elara rose as well, smoothing her skirts. "Thank you for dinner." He paused at the doorway. "Elara." She waited. "Tomorrow there will be a reception. Local families, business associates, people who matter. You'll need to be presentable." Presentable? As if she were a horse being shown at market. "I understand. Do you?" Rowan's voice went cold again, all that momentary warmth evaporating. "This world isn't kind to outsiders. They'll be watching you, judging every word, every gesture. If you embarrass me, I won't." "You can't know that." Elara felt something snap inside her chest. All day she'd been accommodating, agreeable, playing the role assigned to her. But this, being warned like a child who might misbehave at an important event, this was too much. "I know exactly what tomorrow is," she said, her voice sharp. "I know they'll be measuring me against generations of Halridge wives, finding me lacking in breeding and grace and whatever other qualities nobility finds essential. I know my father's money bought me entry into a world that will never truly accept me. I know I'm a stain on your family's pristine reputation." She took a step toward him. "What I don't know is why you're warning me as if I'm too stupid to understand any of that. Do you think I'm blind? That I haven't noticed how you look at me like I'm a necessary evil? That I don't realize our entire marriage is built on the fact that you needed money and I was for sale? Rowan stared at her, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. Elara pressed on, unable to stop now that she'd started. I'll be perfectly presentable tomorrow. I'll smile and curtsy and say all the right things because that's what I was raised to do. Not because I'm nobility, because I'm not, but because my father taught me how to play games with people who think they're better than me. So don't worry, Your Grace, I won't embarrass you. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then Rowan moved. 2 quick steps brought him close enough that Elara had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He was tall. She'd noticed that before, but up close it was more pronounced. He loomed over her, radiating barely contained fury. Don't, he said softly, presume to lecture me about games. You have no idea what kind of world you've entered. Then enlighten me. These people will eat you alive if you show weakness. They'll smile to your face and destroy you behind your back. They'll test you, push you, try to break you just to see if they can. And if you fail, if you give them any reason to doubt you, they won't just reject you. They'll make sure everyone knows the Heir married beneath him. And that matters to you? What they think. It's all that matters. Rowan's voice was rough. Power in this world isn't about money, Elara. It's about perception. Reputation. The moment people stop believing you belong at the top is the moment you start falling. My family has held power for 200 years. I won't be the duke who loses it because his wife doesn't understand how to play the game. Elara held his gaze. Her heart was racing, but she refused to step back, refused to show fear. I understand games better than you think. Do you? My father built an empire from nothing. He fought his way up from poverty through prejudice and closed doors, and men who said people like him didn't deserve success. He taught me every trick, every strategy, every way to survive in a world designed to keep you out. She lifted her chin. So yes, I understand games. Maybe not your games exactly, but the principle is the same. Never show weakness, never give ground, never let them see you break. Something changed in Rowan's expression. The anger was still there, but underneath it she caught a glimpse of something else. Surprise, maybe. Or reassessment. Fine, he said finally, stepping back. Then we understand each other. Do we? Tomorrow you'll be the perfect duchess. You'll charm everyone who matters, prove you belong here, and give them no reason to doubt this marriage. His eyes bore into hers. And then, once you've secured your position and served your purpose, we can return to our separate lives. There it was. The real agenda. Elara felt something inside her turn cold and hard. My purpose? You mean producing an heir? I mean fulfilling the obligations of this marriage. How clinical. It's practical, Rowan said, throwing her own word back at her. We both knew what this was. A business arrangement. There's no reason to pretend otherwise. Elara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that she'd hoped, stupidly, foolishly, that maybe they could build something real despite the circumstances, that maybe duty could become partnership, and partnership could become something more. But looking at his closed expression, the wall he'd rebuilt between them, she knew it was pointless. Fine, she said quietly. A business arrangement. I'll remember that. She started toward the door. Elara. She stopped but didn't turn around. Your rooms adjoin mine, Rowan said. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. There's a connecting door. I'll come to you tonight. The words hit her like ice water. Of course, the wedding night, the consummation, the first step toward that all-important heir. She'd known it was coming, but somehow hearing him announce it so coldly, like he was scheduling an appointment, made it feel worse. As you wish, Your Grace, she said, and walked out before he could see her hands shaking. The hours between dinner and midnight felt both endless and far too short. Elara sat at the vanity in her bedroom while a maid helped her prepare for bed, brushing out her hair, changing her into a nightgown of white silk that felt more like a costume than clothing. The maid's expression was carefully blank, professional, revealing nothing about what she thought of the new duchess or the wedding night ahead. When she finally left, Elara was alone with her thoughts, and they were not kind company. She'd known this would happen, had been prepared for it, or thought she was. Her mother had explained the basics with clinical precision, focusing on duty and endurance rather than any notion of pleasure or connection. Her married friends had offered more practical advice, some of it reassuring, some of it less so. But all of them had spoken about husbands who at least pretended affection, who courted their wives, who showed some care for their comfort. Rowan had shown her nothing but cold practicality. The connecting door opened without warning. No knock, no announcement. One moment Elara was alone, the next Rowan stood in the doorway, wearing a dark robe, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "Are you ready?" he asked. Ready. What a question. Yes. He crossed the room with purpose, stopping a few feet from where she sat. His eyes traveled over her, the nightgown, her loose hair, her face scrubbed clean of powder and paint. She felt exposed under that gaze. Vulnerable. "This doesn't have to be difficult," Rowan said. "If you cooperate, it will be over quickly." Elara's stomach turned. How romantic. "Romance isn't part of our arrangement." "No, I suppose it isn't." She stood, facing him. "Well then, let's get on with it." Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or discomfort. But it vanished quickly. He gestured toward the bed. "If you'll—" Elara climbed onto the bed, positioned herself appropriately, and stared at the canopy overhead while Rowan extinguished most of the lamps. Darkness settled over the room, broken only by dim moonlight filtering through the windows. She heard him move closer, felt the mattress dip as he joined her. His hands were not gentle, but not cruel either. Just efficient, like everything else about him. He did what needed to be done with the minimum of fuss or emotion, his touch clinical, his breathing controlled. Elara lay still and thought about other things, the book she'd been reading before the wedding, the garden at her family's estate, anything to disconnect from what was happening to her body. It hurt. Not terribly, but enough. She bit her lip to keep from making any sound, refusing to give him even that small reaction. When it was over, and it was mercifully brief, Rowan withdrew immediately. He sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, his back to her, shoulders tense. "Did I hurt you?" he asked quietly. "It doesn't matter." "That's not what I asked." Elara pulled the sheet up, covering herself. "You did what you came here to do. Whether it hurt is irrelevant." Rowan turned to look at her. In the dim light, his expression was hard to read, but she thought she saw something there. Guilt, perhaps, or shame. "Elara, please leave." Please." Her voice cracked on the word despite her best efforts. "Just leave." He stood slowly, retying his robe. For a moment he seemed like he might say something more, but then he simply walked back through the connecting door, closing it softly behind him. Elara waited until she heard his footsteps fade before she let herself move. She rolled onto her side, pulling her knees to her chest, and finally let the tears come. Silent, furious tears that she pressed into her pillow so no one would hear. This was her life now. This cold arrangement masquerading as marriage. This man who treated her like a means to an end. This beautiful prison dressed up as a fairy tale. But even as she cried, even as despair threatened to drown her, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered defiance. She hadn't lied to Rowan. She did understand games. She understood survival. And she understood that the only way to escape a cage was to become someone they couldn't keep locked away. If he wanted a dutiful wife who would bear him an heir and then disappear, he was going to be disappointed. Because Elara Halridge now, had no intention of disappearing. She would make them see her, make them acknowledge her, make herself indispensable, and she would start tomorrow. Morning came too early, and not early enough. Elara woke to sunlight streaming through windows she hadn't bothered to cover, her body aching in unfamiliar places, her mind already racing ahead to everything the day would demand. She forced herself upright, pushing aside the tangled sheets and the memories they carried. A maid appeared almost immediately, a different girl than last night, younger, with nervous hands and downcast eyes. She helped Elara bathe and dress, choosing a gown of deep emerald that made her look older, more severe, more duchess-like, Elara supposed. The girl worked in silence, lacing the corset tight enough to make breathing an effort, pinning hair into an elaborate style that pulled at Elara's scalp. "What's your name?" Elara asked. The maid startled. "Annie, Your Grace." "How long have you worked here, Annie?" 3 years, Your Grace." "Do you like it?" Annie's hand stilled in Elara's hair. Yes, Your Grace. It's good work. That's not what I asked. The girl met her eyes in the mirror, uncertain. It's the best position I could hope for. My family's grateful for the wages. But do you like it? Annie's mouth opened, closed. She looked terrified, like Elara had asked her to confess treason. It's not about liking, Your Grace. It's about surviving. Elara felt something twist in her chest. This girl couldn't be more than 16. Already she'd learned that survival mattered more than happiness, duty more than desire. How many women in this house, in this whole world, had learned the same lesson? Well, Elara said quietly, I hope that changes someday, for you and everyone else. Annie finished the styling in confused silence. When she left, Elara stood alone in her room, studying herself in the mirror. The woman looking back appeared composed, elegant, every inch a duchess. Inside, Elara felt like she was drowning. She found her way to breakfast through sheer determination and one wrong turn. The morning room was smaller than the dining room, filled with light from tall windows overlooking the gardens. Rowan sat at the table reading correspondence, barely glancing up when she entered. Good morning, Elara said. Morning. He gestured vaguely toward the sideboard where breakfast had been laid out. Help yourself. She filled a plate with food she didn't want and sat across from him. They ate in silence, broken only by the rustle of papers and the clink of silverware. It should have been companionable, a married couple sharing breakfast, but instead it felt like two strangers forced to occupy the same space. The reception begins at 2, Rowan said eventually, still not looking at her. I'll introduce you to the important families. Follow my lead, and you'll be fine. I'm capable of making conversation on my own. I'm sure you are, but these people have known my family for generations. They have expectations. About what I should say? How I should act? About everything. Finally, he looked up, his gray eyes unreadable. Just remember what I said. Don't show weakness. Elara set down her fork carefully. I'm not weak. Everyone's weak about something. Rowan folded his correspondence with precise movements. The trick is making sure no one finds out what. And what's your weakness? The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or memory. Then his expression hardened. I don't have one. Everyone has one. You just said so. I said everyone's weak about something. I didn't say I was everyone. He stood, buttoning his jacket. I'll see you at 2. Don't be late. He left before she could respond. Elara sat alone in the sunny breakfast room and wondered if this was how her life would be from now on. Conversations that went nowhere. A husband who couldn't stand to be in the same room with her longer than necessary. Endless days of playing a role she hadn't chosen. The thought made her want to scream. Instead, she went exploring. The manor was even larger than she'd realized. She wandered through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced Halridge ancestors, through rooms filled with furniture no one ever used, past servants who bowed and avoided eye contact. Everything was beautiful and cold and utterly impersonal. Like a museum, not a home. She found the library by accident, pushing open a door she'd assumed led to another unused parlor. Instead, she discovered floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books, comfortable chairs arranged near windows, a desk covered in more books and scattered papers. Someone actually used this room. She could smell ink and old leather and the faint scent of tobacco. Elara stepped inside, drawn immediately to the shelves. Her fingers trailed over spines as she read titles: philosophy, history, poetry, scientific treatises. The collection was impressive and eclectic, suggesting someone with wide-ranging interests and actual curiosity about the world. Can I help you find something? She spun around. An older man stood in the doorway, white-haired and slightly stooped, wearing spectacles that magnified his pale blue eyes. He regarded her with interest rather than judgment, which was such a change from everyone else that Elara almost didn't know how to respond. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to intrude. Intrude? My dear girl, this is your home now. You can't intrude in your own home. He moved further into the room with a slight limp. I'm Dr. Marcus Ashford. I served as physician to the late Duke and now act as, general advisor, I suppose, and friend, when Rowan allows it. You know him well? Since he was a boy. Delivered him myself, actually. Dr. Ashford settled into one of the chairs near the window with a satisfied sigh. Difficult birth. His mother nearly died. She never quite recovered, truth be told. Elara had heard that much. The former Duchess had died when Rowan was 15, some lingering illness that consumed her slowly over years. His father had followed a decade later, leaving Rowan to inherit a title and debts he hadn't asked for. "You're wondering why I'm telling you this," Dr. Ashford said, studying her face. "A little. Because you need to understand what shaped him. Rowan's had to carry weight most men never bear. His mother's illness, his father's failures, the slow erosion of everything his family built. It's made him—" The doctor paused, searching for words. "Hard, guarded, afraid to trust." "Afraid?" Elara couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. "He doesn't seem afraid of anything. That's because fear looks different on different people. Some people run from what scares them. Others build walls so high nothing can reach them." Dr. Ashford's eyes were kind but sharp. "You'll need patience with him, I think." "I don't think patience is what he wants from me. What people want and what they need are rarely the same thing." Before Elara could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Dr. Ashford stood quickly. "I should let you explore in peace. But, Your Grace, you're welcome in this library anytime. Some of the best wisdom in the world lives in these books. Better company than most people, in my experience." He left just as Mrs. Brennan appeared in the doorway. The housekeeper's expression was carefully neutral as always, but Elara thought she detected a hint of disapproval. "Your Grace, the first guests will arrive in less than an hour. We should get you ready." "Right. The reception. The performance." Elara took a deep breath and followed Mrs. Brennan back through the maze of corridors to her rooms, where Annie was waiting with yet another dress. This one even more elaborate than the morning gown, all silk and pearls and delicate embroidery. As Annie helped her change, Elara tried to prepare herself mentally. She'd attended social gatherings before, had learned how to navigate her father's business dinners and her mother's society teas, but those had been her world, however uncomfortable. This was something else entirely. These people would be looking for any sign that she didn't belong, any excuse to dismiss her as unsuitable. She couldn't give them one. By 2 o'clock, Elara stood beside Rowan in the main hall as guests began arriving. He'd barely acknowledged her when she appeared, just gave her a quick once-over and nodded approval. Now he touched her elbow occasionally to guide her forward, introducing her with practiced ease. "Lord and Lady Pemberton, may I present my wife, Duchess Elara Halridge." "Charmed," Lady Pemberton said in a tone that suggested she was anything but. Her eyes raked over Elara, cataloging every detail. "How refreshing to have new blood in the family." "New blood. A polite way of saying common." Elara smiled sweetly. "Thank you. I'm looking forward to bringing fresh perspective to some rather stale traditions." Lady Pemberton's smile froze. Rowan's hand tightened on Elara's elbow in warning, but she ignored him. She hadn't promised to be invisible, just presentable. The next hour passed in a blur of names and faces. Lord this, Lady that, distant cousins and business associates, and people whose only claim to importance seemed to be that their families had been important centuries ago. Some were polite. Some were openly curious. Many radiated the kind of condescension that came from never having to question their place in the world. "Your father's in manufacturing, I understand," one elderly earl said, making it sound like an accusation. "Textiles, primarily," Elara replied, "though he's expanded into other industries quite successfully." "How industrious, isn't it? I've always admired people who build things rather than simply inheriting them." The earl's face purpled. Rowan steered her away quickly. "What are you doing?" he hissed once they were out of earshot. "Having a conversation." "You're antagonizing them." "I'm defending my family." "You're making enemies." Rowan's voice was low and furious. "This isn't a debate, Elara. These people's opinions matter." "Why? What can they actually do to us?" "They can make our lives unbearable. They can close doors, withdraw support, turn society against us. Power isn't always obvious, but it's always there." "Then maybe they should learn that power works both ways." Before Rowan could respond, a new voice cut through the chatter. "Rowan, darling, you're looking well." Elara turned to see a woman approaching, tall, elegant, with golden hair piled high, and a dress that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. She moved through the crowd like she owned it, smiling at Rowan with an intimacy that made Elara's stomach clench. Rowan's entire body had gone rigid. "Vivian? It's been too long." Vivian reached them, her blue eyes sliding over Elara with barely concealed assessment. "And this must be the new Duchess. How absolutely delightful." The word dripped with insincerity. Elara felt Rowan's hand drop from her elbow, felt him step slightly away, and suddenly understood. This woman meant something, or had once. "Lady Vivian Ashworth," Rowan said, his voice carefully controlled. "May I present my wife, Elara?" Charmed. Vivian extended a gloved hand. Her smile was sharp as glass. "I was so surprised to hear about the wedding. So sudden. One minute Rowan's sworn off marriage entirely, the next he's sending invitations. What changed your mind, darling?" "Circumstances," Rowan said shortly. "How mysterious." Vivian's eyes lingered on him a moment longer before turning back to Elara. "You must tell me everything, Your Grace. How you met, how he proposed, all the romantic details. I'm simply dying to know." "There's not much to tell," Elara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "It was a practical arrangement." "Practical," Vivian laughed, a bright crystalline sound that carried across the room. "How wonderfully honest. Most brides at least pretend to be in love." "I prefer honesty to pretense." "Do you? How refreshing." Vivian touched Rowan's arm, a casual gesture that somehow felt possessive. "Well, I won't monopolize you both. I'm sure you have many other guests to attend to, but we simply must have dinner soon. I want to hear all about married life." She glided away, leaving awkward silence in her wake. Elara stared at Rowan, whose jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "Who is she?" Elara asked. "No one." "That's obviously a lie. It's not your concern." "She touched you like she owns you. That makes it my concern." Rowan finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was so raw it took her breath away. "She's someone from my past. That's all you need to know." "Was she not here?" His voice turned sharp. "We'll discuss this later. Right now you need to finish greeting guests and stop making enemies of everyone who matters." He walked away before she could argue, leaving Elara standing alone in a room full of strangers. She watched him disappear into the crowd, watched how people parted for him, how they deferred and smiled and tried to catch his attention. The Duke of Halridge, powerful and untouchable. And Elara was his wife. The woman he'd married out of necessity, the stranger in his bed, the unwanted addition to his carefully controlled world. Something hardened inside her chest. She spent the rest of the reception playing the perfect Duchess, smiling, conversing, deflecting barbs with grace. But her mind was working, calculating, planning. These people thought they knew how power worked. They thought she was an outsider who could be dismissed or ignored. They were wrong. After the last guests finally left, after hours of performing for an audience that ranged from skeptical to hostile, Elara found Rowan in his study. He sat behind a massive desk covered in papers, a glass of whiskey at his elbow, looking exhausted. "We need to talk," Elara said from the doorway. "Not tonight." "Yes, tonight." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Who is Vivian?" Rowan took a long drink. "I told you, someone from my past." "You were engaged." His hand stilled halfway to setting down the glass. "How did you—" Dr. Ashford mentioned it. He didn't give details, but I can fill in the rest. "You loved her. She broke your heart. And now you can't stand to let anyone close because you're afraid it will happen again." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Elara moved closer to the desk. "You treat me like a transaction because that's safe. If you never let yourself care, you can never be hurt. But here's the problem, Rowan. I'm not going away. We're married. We're stuck with each other. And I refuse to spend the rest of my life being treated like a necessary evil." "What do you want from me?" The question came out harsh, desperate. "You knew what this was, a business arrangement, nothing more. I want respect. I want to be treated like a person instead of a means to an end." Her voice shook, but she pressed on. "I want to matter. Not as your wife necessarily, but as a human being who has thoughts and feelings and value beyond my ability to produce an heir." Rowan stared at her. In the lamplight, his face looked haggard, older than his years. I can't give you what you're asking for. Can't or won't? Does it matter? Yes, Elara said fiercely, because one means you're incapable and the other means you're a coward. The words hung between them, sharp and unforgivable. Rowan stood slowly, his eyes blazing. Get out. No, this is my study. Get out. Make me. Elara crossed her arms. Go ahead. Call servants to drag me out. Show everyone in this house that the great Duke of Halridge can't even control his own wife. You have no idea what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm refusing to be invisible. She took a breath, steadying herself. You told me not to show weakness. Well, here's the thing about weakness. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're afraid. Admit you've been hurt. Stop pretending you're made of stone. I'm not pretending. Yes, you are. You're terrified that if you let yourself care about anything, about me, about this marriage, you'll lose it like you lost her. So you keep everyone at arm's length and tell yourself it's strength, when really it's just fear. Rowan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a moment, Elara thought he might actually throw her out. Then something in him seemed to break. He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking defeated. You're right, he said quietly. I am afraid. The admission stunned her. Elara had expected anger, denial, anything but honesty. She stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Vivian and I were engaged, Rowan continued, staring at his desk. I was 23. I thought I'd found someone who understood me, who saw past the title and the expectations. We were going to be married within the month. He took another drink. Then I discovered she'd been having an affair with my closest friend. Had been for months. Everyone knew, except me. Rowan, the humiliation was worse than the heartbreak. I became a joke. The Duke too blind to see his own fiancée betraying him. People whispered about it for years, some still do. His eyes finally met hers. So yes, I'm afraid. Afraid of trusting the wrong person again. Afraid of becoming that blind fool a second time. Elara felt something shift in her chest, anger and frustration giving way to understanding. I'm not her. I know. Do you? Because you treat me like I might betray you at any moment. I treat you like what you are. A stranger I was forced to marry. But the words lacked conviction now. I don't know you, Elara. I don't know if you're trustworthy or ambitious or secretly laughing at me like everyone else. Then get to know me. She moved around the desk, standing beside his chair. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to like me. But we could try being honest with each other. We could try building something real instead of this cold arrangement. Rowan looked up at her, vulnerability written across his face. What if I can't? What if you can? Elara held out her hand. One chance. That's all I'm asking. Let me prove I'm not your enemy. He stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment. Then slowly, he took it. His palm was warm against hers, his grip firm. It was just a handshake, nothing romantic, but it felt like more, like a beginning. One chance, Rowan said, but if you betray that trust, I won't. You can't promise that. People break promises all the time. Not me. Elara squeezed his hand once before releasing it. I keep my word, always. It's one of the few things my father taught me that I actually value. Something like a smile ghosted across Rowan's face. Your father sounds like an interesting man. He's a difficult man, but he taught me to fight for what I want. She paused. And right now, what I want is a marriage that doesn't feel like a prison sentence. That's a low bar. Start low, aim higher. This time Rowan actually laughed, a short, surprise sound, but genuine. You're persistent. You're stubborn. We'll balance each other out. They stood in the quiet study, the tension between them easing slightly. It wasn't forgiveness or trust or anything close to affection, but it was less hostile. A crack in the wall he'd built so carefully. I should warn you, Rowan said after a moment. If you're planning to make yourself indispensable around here, people won't like it. Change makes them nervous. Good. Let them be nervous. They'll fight back. Then I'll fight harder. Elara met his gaze steadily. I'm not the delicate flower they think I am. I'm my father's daughter. I was raised to compete, to win, to never back down from a challenge. Is that what this is to you? A competition? No, it's survival. She moved toward the door, then paused. But if it has to be a competition, I plan to win. She left him sitting in his study, surrounded by papers and whiskey and the ghosts of past betrayals. As she walked back through the darkened corridors to her room, Elara felt something stirring in her chest. Not hope exactly. That was too fragile, too easily crushed. But determination, purpose. She'd spent today being examined and judged, had felt the weight of their scrutiny and found it wanting. These people thought they could dismiss her with condescension and cold politeness. They thought she'd wilt under their disdain or conform to their expectations. They had no idea what she was capable of. The next morning, Elara began planning. She spent hours in the library researching local institutions, reading about the region's history and current challenges. Dr. Ashford found her there, buried in books and taking notes. "Planning a revolution?" he asked mildly. "Just educating myself." "About?" "Everything I should have been taught but wasn't." Elara gestured at the books spread across the desk. Rowan was right. These people have expectations I don't meet, so I need to either meet them or create new expectations entirely. Dr. Ashford settled into a nearby chair. "And which path do you plan to take?" "Both." She looked up from her notes. "I'll learn everything they think a duchess should know, but I'll also do things they'd never expect, things that matter." "Such as?" Elara hesitated. The idea had been forming slowly, crystallizing as she read about the region. The villages surrounding this estate, they have no schools. Girls especially have no access to education beyond what their mothers can teach them. They'll spend their whole lives limited by circumstances they didn't choose. "Like you," Dr. Ashford said quietly. "Like me. And I can't fix everything, but I can fix that. I can create opportunities where there weren't any before." She met the doctor's eyes. "Rowan's family has money and influence. Why not use it for something that actually matters?" "That's ambitious and expensive." "My father's very good at raising money. He taught me everything he knows." "But will Rowan support it?" "Good question." Elara thought about last night's conversation, about the tentative understanding they'd reached. "He said he'd give me a chance. This is it." Over the next week, Elara threw herself into planning. She drafted proposals, calculated costs, researched successful education programs in other regions. She barely slept, working late into the night while Rowan stayed in his own rooms. They saw each other at meals, maintained polite conversation, but kept their distance. It was almost comfortable in its awkwardness. Then, 8 days after the reception, Elara requested a formal meeting. Rowan looked surprised when she appeared in his study carrying a stack of papers. "What's this?" he asked. "A proposal. I want to establish a girls' school in the village." Rowan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You're serious?" "Completely." Elara set the papers on his desk. "I've worked out the costs, identified suitable locations, researched curriculum. It's feasible." "Feasible doesn't mean advisable." "Why not?" "Because people will ask questions. They'll wonder why the new duchess is suddenly championing education for common girls. They'll think you're overstepping." "Let them think what they want." Elara pulled up a chair, refusing to be dismissed. "You told me power is about perception. Right now I'm perceived as an outsider who doesn't belong. But if I do something meaningful, something that improves lives and builds loyalty, that changes. People remember who helps them. They become allies." Rowan picked up the papers, scanning them. "This is more thought out than I expected." "Did you think I was just being impulsive?" "Honestly, yes." Kept reading. "But this is thorough, well-researched, practical." "My father didn't raise a fool." "No, he didn't." Rowan set down the papers, his expression unreadable. "If I agree to this, you understand it will take time, resources, energy. You'll be committing yourself to something long-term." "I understand." "And if it fails, it won't fail. You can't guarantee that." "No," Elara admitted, "but I can guarantee I'll give everything I have to make it succeed. That's all anyone can promise." Rowan was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face. Then he reached for a pen. "I'll approve the funding, but I want regular reports on progress. And if it becomes a scandal or embarrassment, it won't." He signed the approval with quick, decisive strokes. "You're either very brave or very foolish." Can't I be both? That earned her another of those rare, fleeting smiles. Apparently, Elara left his study with the signed approval clutched in her hands, her heart racing with equal parts excitement and terror. She'd done it, convinced him. Won his support, however tentative. Now she just had to make it work. The next weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Elara threw herself into the project with single-minded intensity, coordinating with local builders, interviewing potential teachers, meeting with village leaders. She rode out to the construction site daily, often returning muddy and exhausted but exhilarated. Mrs. Brennan disapproved, the other servants whispered, but Elara didn't care. For the first time since arriving at Halridge Manor, she felt like herself, purposeful, driven, alive. Rowan watched from a distance, occasionally asking about progress, but mostly staying out of her way. Their interactions remained polite but guarded, neither pushing for more intimacy. He came to her room twice more for the necessary business of producing an heir, but the encounters were as clinical as the first. Afterward, he always asked if he'd hurt her, and she always said no, and they both knew it was a lie in more ways than one. But something was shifting between them. Small moments, a shared glance over dinner, a brief conversation in the library, his hand steadying her elbow when she stumbled on the stairs. Nothing dramatic, just incremental movement towards something less hostile. Then came the riding accident. Elara had taken to riding out to the construction site rather than using the carriage. It was faster, and she enjoyed the freedom of it, the rush of wind and the power of the horse beneath her. She'd been an excellent rider as a girl before her mother decided such activities were unladylike. That morning she was racing across the fields, exhilarated by speed and sunshine, when a rabbit darted across the path. Her horse spooked, rearing back. Elara tried to hold on, but her grip slipped. She felt herself falling, saw the ground rushing up. Strong arms caught her. She landed hard against a solid chest instead of dirt, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. "What the hell were you thinking?" Rowan. His voice was harsh, his arms tight around her. He'd been riding behind her, had somehow caught her before she hit the ground. Now he held her against him, his heart hammering against her cheek. "I'm fine," Elara managed. "You could have broken your neck." "But I didn't." "You could have died." His arms tightened almost painfully. "You could have—" He stopped abruptly, seeming to realize how tightly he was holding her. Slowly he relaxed his grip, helping her find her footing, but he didn't let go completely, his hands remaining on her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough. "No, just shaken." "Let me see." He examined her carefully, checking for injuries with surprisingly gentle hands. His fingers brushed her face, her arms, her ribs, making sure nothing was broken or bleeding. "You're lucky." "You caught me." "Barely." Rowan's jaw clenched. "If I'd been a second slower—" "But you weren't." They stood frozen in that field, his hands still on her shoulders, both of them breathing hard. Elara could see something in his eyes she'd never seen before, genuine fear. Not for his reputation or his plans, but for her actual physical safety. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly. "What?" "Why do you care if I get hurt? I'm just a transaction, remember? A means to an end." Rowan's hands dropped away like she'd burned him. "Don't." "Don't what? Ask uncomfortable questions?" "Don't twist my words." He stepped back, his expression shuddering. "You're my wife. Of course I don't want you injured." "That's not what that was." Elara moved closer, studying his face. "You were terrified. I saw it." "You're imagining things." "Am I?" She reached out, touching his chest where his heart still raced. "Your heart's pounding." Rowan caught her hand, but he didn't push it away, just held it there against him. "You scared me." "Happy?" "No. But it's honest." Elara's eyes searched his. "This is what I meant about building something real. These moments, when you let yourself actually feel something instead of hiding behind walls. That's real. That matters." "I can't—" Rowan's voice broke slightly. "I don't know how to do this. How to let someone in without drowning." "One step at a time. That's all. Just one honest moment, then another, until it becomes easier." He studied her face for a long moment. Then, without warning, he pulled her close and kissed her. Not gently, not cautiously, but with desperate hunger, like a man who'd been denying himself water in the desert and finally broke. Elara gasped against his mouth but didn't pull away. She kissed him back with equal desperation, her hands fisting in his shirt. This wasn't duty or obligation. This was want, raw and unguarded. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rowan pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "For what?" "For everything. How I treated you, what I said on our wedding night, all of it." His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "I was cruel because I was afraid, and you didn't deserve that." Tears pricked Elara's eyes. "Say it again." "I'm sorry." "No, the other part." "You didn't deserve it." Rowan's voice was fierce now. "You deserved better. You deserve better, and I'm going to try, really try to give you that." Elara nodded, not trusting her voice. This was what she'd been fighting for, this crack in his armor, this glimpse of the man beneath the duke. They rode back to the manor together, not touching, but closer than before. Something fundamental had shifted between them in that field. Not love. That was too much to ask, too soon to hope for. But the possibility of it. The first fragile shoots of something that might grow into partnership, into trust, into whatever came after. That night, when Rowan came to her room, it was different. He kissed her first, actually kissed her like he meant it. His hands were gentle, exploring, trying to bring her pleasure instead of just taking his own. And afterward, instead of leaving immediately, he stayed, just for a few minutes, lying beside her in the darkness. "Thank you," Elara whispered. "For what?" "For trying." His hand found hers under the covers, their fingers tangling together. "One step at a time." "One step at a time," she agreed. It was progress. Slow, imperfect, uncertain progress. But it was real. And Elara would take real over perfect any day. Over the following weeks, something fragile began to grow between them. Not love, not yet, but something closer to understanding. Rowan started joining Elara for breakfast more often, asking about her school project with what seemed like genuine interest. She learned he had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he forgot to guard himself, that he read philosophy late at night when he couldn't sleep, that he was kinder to the servants than most nobles bothered to be. The school was taking shape beautifully. The building stood complete, walls freshly painted, desks arranged in neat rows. Elara had hired 3 teachers, women with education and passion, but few opportunities in a world that didn't value either. The village families were cautiously optimistic, their daughters excited about possibilities they'd never imagined. "You've done something remarkable," Rowan said one evening as they reviewed the final preparations. They sat in his study together now, sharing the space in a way that would have been unthinkable a month ago. "People are talking about it. Positively. Mostly." "Mostly?" "There are always dissenters, people who think change is dangerous, who prefer the old ways." He set down the papers he'd been reading. "Lord Pemberton's been vocal about his disapproval. Says educating common girls above their station will lead to unrest. Lord Pemberton can take his disapproval and—" Elara caught herself. "Sorry, I'm working on diplomacy. Don't apologize for having spine." Rowan's expression was almost warm. "It's one of the things I—" He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "One of your better qualities." It wasn't a declaration of affection, but coming from him it felt significant. Elara smiled despite herself. The school's opening day arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, warm sun, a gentle breeze. Elara had invited local families and a select group of nobility to attend the ceremony. She'd agonized over the guest list, wanting to make a statement without causing offense. Rowan had helped her navigate the politics, suggesting which families would be supportive and which to avoid. "You're nervous," he observed as they dressed that morning. He'd started coming to her rooms in the evenings more regularly now, sometimes for physical intimacy, but increasingly just to talk, to be together. "Terrified," Elara admitted, struggling with the buttons on her dress. "What if no one comes? What if they come but it's a disaster? What if—" "Stop." Rowan crossed the room, gently moving her hands aside to finish the buttons himself. "It's going to be fine. You've planned everything perfectly." "You can't know that." "No, but I know you." His hands rested on her shoulders, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "You don't do anything halfway. This school will succeed because you won't accept any other outcome." The confidence in his voice steadied her. When did you become my champion? Somewhere between your stubbornness and my stupidity. He pressed a quick kiss to her temple, a casual gesture of affection that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. Come on, let's go change some lives. The ceremony exceeded every expectation. Families filled the schoolyard, children running between adults, everyone dressed in their finest. Several noble families attended as well. Not many, but enough to lend legitimacy. Lady Thornwood, an elderly countess with progressive views, gave a speech praising Elara's vision. The village elder spoke about opportunity and hope. When it came time for Elara to address the crowd, she felt Rowan's hand briefly squeeze hers in encouragement before she stepped forward. I'm not going to pretend I belong here, she began, her voice carrying across the yard. I wasn't born into this world. I don't have generations of noble blood or ancient family connections. But I do understand what it means to be limited by circumstances beyond your control. To have dreams that seem impossible because of who you are or where you come from. She saw heads nodding, recognition in their faces. This school exists because I believe talent and intelligence aren't determined by birth. They're not the exclusive domain of the wealthy or well-connected. They exist everywhere, in villages and cities, in manor houses and tenant farms. All they need is opportunity. Elara gestured to the building behind her. This is that opportunity. A chance for girls to learn, to grow, to become more than the world expects them to be. And if we're lucky, they'll change that world for everyone who comes after. The applause was thunderous. Elara caught sight of Rowan in the crowd, his expression proud, and felt something warm unfurl in her chest. The day should have been perfect. It was perfect. Until Vivian arrived. She appeared during the reception that followed, gliding through the crowd in a dress of scarlet silk that made everyone else look drab by comparison. Elara spotted her immediately, felt her stomach drop. What's she doing here? Elara asked Rowan quietly. His jaw tightened. I don't know. She wasn't invited. Should I ask her to leave? No, that would cause a scene. Rowan's hand found the small of Elara's back, a protective gesture. Just ignore her. But ignoring Vivian proved impossible. She circulated through the crowd with practiced ease, charming everyone she spoke to, drawing attention like a lodestone. And always her eyes tracked back to Rowan. Your Grace, what a delightful event! Vivian appeared at Elara's elbow during a lull in conversation. Up close, her beauty was almost painful. Flawless skin, perfect features, the kind of elegance that came from generations of breeding. You must be so proud. I am, thank you. It's very ambitious. Educating common girls. Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. Some might say too ambitious for someone so new to society. But I suppose merchants' daughters think differently about such things. The insult was delivered so sweetly, it took a moment to register. Elara felt her face flush. Education benefits everyone. Even those who were born privileged might learn something. Oh, I'm sure. Vivian's gaze slid past Elara to where Rowan stood talking with local officials. Rowan always did appreciate clever women. It's part of what drew us together all those years ago. That was a long time ago. Was it? Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Vivian's expression turned wistful, calculated. We understood each other so well. Shared history, shared values, she paused meaningfully. Everything, really. Yet you betrayed him. Vivian's mask slipped for just a second, something cold flashing in her eyes. Then the sweetness returned. Everyone makes mistakes when they're young. I've certainly regretted mine. Have you? Every day. Vivian touched Elara's arm with false sympathy. But I'm sure you and Rowan are very happy together. These practical marriages can work out beautifully, can't they? As long as both parties understand their place. She drifted away before Elara could respond, leaving poison in her wake. Elara stood frozen, fury and insecurity warring inside her. What did that mean? What was Vivian implying? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Elara smiled and thanked guests and accepted congratulations, but her mind kept circling back to Vivian's words. Shared everything. Practical marriages. Understand their place. Each phrase was a barb, carefully placed to wound. By the time they returned to the manor that evening, Elara was exhausted and on edge. Rowan seemed distracted too, his earlier warmth replaced by tension. That went well, he said as they entered the house, but his voice was flat. Did it? The school opening was a success. That's what matters. Is it? Because Vivian seemed to matter quite a bit. Rowan stopped walking. Don't. Don't what? Notice that your former fiancé showed up uninvited and spent the entire afternoon making pointed comments about your shared history? She was trying to get under your skin. Don't let her. Well, it worked. Elara pulled off her gloves with sharp movements. She implied you still have feelings for her, that our marriage is just a practical arrangement you're tolerating until what? I don't know, you tell me, because apparently you two shared everything and understood each other in ways I never could. That's in the past. Rowan's voice was hard now. I've told you this. What Vivian and I had ended years ago. Did it? Because the way she looked at you. Elara, stop. The way you looked at her. I said stop! Rowan's shout echoed through the entrance hall. Servants scattered. He took a breath, visibly controlling himself. I'm not having this conversation. Not tonight. He walked away, leaving Elara standing alone, surrounded by her doubts. The next morning brought disaster. Elara woke to frantic knocking. Mrs. Brennan stood in the doorway, her usually composed face pale. Your Grace, there's been an incident. You need to come immediately. What kind of incident? The school. Someone vandalized it during the night. Elara's blood ran cold. She threw on clothes and raced to the village, arriving to find windows shattered, walls defaced with crude words, desks overturned inside. The teacher stood among the wreckage, crying. Village families gathered outside, angry and afraid. Who did this? Elara demanded. We don't know, one of the teachers said. We arrived this morning and found it like this. Elara walked through the destruction, her carefully built dream reduced to rubble and hate. On one wall, someone had painted horror in letters 3 feet tall. On another, go back where you came from. This is personal, Dr. Ashford said quietly. He'd arrived shortly after Elara, summoned by concerned villagers. This isn't just about the school. No. Elara stared at the vandalism, fury replacing shock. It's about me. Someone wants me gone. Word spread quickly. By afternoon, the entire region knew about the attack. Responses split predictably, supporters expressing outrage, detractors suggesting Elara had brought it on herself by overstepping. And underneath all the public commentary ran darker whispers. Rumors started small, just hints, suggestions, nothing concrete. But within days, they'd metastasized into full-blown scandal. Elara was having an affair. The story varied depending on who told it. Some said a teacher at the school, others claimed a village craftsman. A few suggested someone from her past. But the core accusation remained constant. The new duchess was unfaithful, her marriage a sham, her school project a cover for illicit meetings. This is insane, Elara said when Rowan confronted her about the rumors. They stood in his study, tension crackling between them. You can't possibly believe... What am I supposed to believe? Rowan's voice was dangerous. These rumors appeared out of nowhere. Someone's feeding them. Yes, someone who wants to destroy me, or someone who knows something I don't. The accusation hit like a slap. Elara felt the air leave her lungs. You think I'm lying. I think you're hiding something. I'm not. Then explain. Rowan slammed his hand on the desk. Explain how these rumors started. Explain who would have reason to make them up. Explain why multiple sources are claiming to have seen you meeting secretly with a man at the construction site. I met with builders and teachers, all men because that's who you hire for construction, and most available educators happen to be male. Elara was shaking now, rage and hurt colliding. I've done nothing wrong. Vivian said, Of course Vivian said something. Are you really this blind? Rowan's face went white. What did you say? She's behind this. The vandalism, the rumors, all of it. She wants to destroy our marriage because she can't stand that you moved on. That's paranoid. Is it? Or are you just desperate to believe I'm the problem because that's easier than admitting you still have feelings for her? I don't have feelings for her. Then why are you taking her word over mine? Elara's voice cracked. Why are you so ready to believe I betrayed you when I've done nothing but try to make this marriage work? When I fought for every scrap of trust between us while you kept me at arm's length? Rowan stared at her, conflict written across his face. I don't know what to believe. You believe me. That's what you do when you trust someone. You believe them. I tried that once before. It nearly destroyed me. I'm not her, Elara was shouting now, past caring who heard. I'm not Vivian. I'm not the woman who broke your heart. I'm the woman who's been here, who's been real with you, who's given you every reason to trust her, and you're throwing it away because you're too scared to believe someone might actually be honest. That's not fair. None of this is fair. You want to know what's unfair? Being judged for someone else's sins. Being punished for crimes I didn't commit. Having my reputation destroyed by lies while my own husband questions my integrity. Tears streamed down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. I've done everything you asked, been the perfect duchess, built something meaningful, tried to be patient while you worked through your damage, and the first time someone plants doubt, you side with them over me. I'm not siding with anyone. I'm trying to find the truth. The truth is standing right in front of you, but you can't see it because you've already decided what you want to believe. Silence fell between them, heavy and poisonous. Rowan looked away first. Get out, Elara said quietly. This is my study. I don't care. Get out of my sight before I say something we'll both regret. He left without another word. The next days were torture. The rumors intensified, spreading through every level of society. Anonymous letters arrived at the manor, some threatening, some obscene. The school remained closed, the teachers afraid to return. Village families withdrew their daughters' enrollments, afraid of association with scandal. Everything Elara had built crumbled around her. Rowan avoided her completely. They took meals separately, occupied different wings of the manor, communicated only through servants. The fragile trust they'd developed shattered like glass under pressure. Elara felt herself breaking. She stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping more than a few hours each night. She spent her days in the library researching, trying to find evidence of who was behind the rumors. Betrayals went cold, witnesses recanted or disappeared, and the web of lies seemed impossible to untangle. You need to stop this, Dr. Ashford said, finding her surrounded by papers one night. You're making yourself ill. I have to prove my innocence. Your innocence doesn't need proving, not to people who matter. Rowan matters, and he doesn't believe me. Dr. Ashford sighed heavily. He's afraid. Fear makes people stupid. Fear makes people cruel. Elara's voice was hollow. I thought we were past this. I thought he trusted me. Trust isn't binary. It's not something you either have or don't have. It's built in layers, and sometimes those layers crack under pressure. The doctor sat down beside her. But cracks can be repaired if both people want to repair them. I don't think he does. Then make him want to. Elara looked up. How? Find the truth. Not to prove your innocence, to prove his fear wrong. Show him that believing in people isn't always a mistake. Dr. Ashford touched her shoulder gently. You're stronger than he is, Elara. You always have been. Don't let his weakness break you. The words stayed with her. That night, unable to sleep, Elara made a decision. She would find the truth. Not for Rowan, not to save her reputation, but because she refused to let lies win. She started by retracing every rumor to its source. She interviewed servants, questioned villagers, followed leads that went nowhere. And slowly, painfully, a pattern emerged. Every rumor traced back to social events attended by one person, Vivian. But knowing and proving were different things. Elara needed evidence, something concrete that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. She found it in a letter. The anonymous threatening letters that had been arriving at the manor, Elara had saved everyone looking for patterns. On a hunch, she compared the handwriting to social correspondence she'd received from various nobles. Most didn't match, but one did. The handwriting on an invitation from Vivian matched the handwriting on the threats. It wasn't perfect evidence. Handwriting could be forged, and Vivian would claim someone was setting her up. But combined with the pattern of rumor origins, it was enough to create reasonable doubt. Elara took her findings to Rowan. He was in his study, as always, surrounded by work he was using to avoid dealing with their marriage. He looked up when she entered, his expression guarded. I need you to look at something, Elara said without preamble. I'm busy. Make time. Something in her voice must have convinced him. He gestured for her to continue. Elara laid out everything, the pattern of rumors, the matching handwriting, the timeline of events. She'd compiled it all into a report worthy of her father's business empire, clear and damning. Rowan read through it in silence. When he finished, his face was ashen. "This could be coincidence," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's not coincidence, it's deliberate sabotage. Even if you're right, and I'm not saying you are, we can't prove Vivian wrote these letters. The handwriting similarity isn't enough." "Then what would be enough?" Elara leaned forward. "What would it take for you to believe me? A confession? Witnesses? What?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You just don't want to admit it because it means confronting the woman you once loved and accepting that she's capable of this kind of cruelty." Rowan flinched. "Don't. Why not? It's true. You're protecting her. Still, after everything." "I'm not protecting anyone. I'm trying to be rational." "Rational?" Elara laughed bitterly. "There's nothing rational about this. You've been irrational from the start, letting your past poison our present, letting fear make decisions instead of facts." "That's not—" "It is. You're so terrified of being betrayed again that you betrayed me first. You threw away everything we'd built based on rumors and suspicion because that's safer than actually trusting someone." "I can't just take your word." "Why not?" Elara's voice rose. "Why can't you just believe me? Just once. Why can't you choose to trust instead of doubt?" "Because last time I trusted blindly, it destroyed me." "I'm not her!" Elara slammed her hands on his desk. "Stop punishing me for what she did. Stop making me pay for her sins. I am not Vivian." "I know that." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you've already convicted me. You've already decided I'm guilty. Nothing I say or do will change that because you've been waiting for me to betray you since the day we met." Rowan stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "That's not true." "Isn't it? Be honest. You never believed we could make this work. You never thought I could be trusted. You married me out of necessity, and you've been counting down the days until I proved you right. Stop putting words in my mouth. Then tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you actually believed in us, in this marriage, in the possibility that I might be different." The silence that followed was answer enough. Elara felt something inside her finally break. All the fight drained out of her, leaving only exhausted resignation. "I see." "Elara, no. You've made your position clear." She straightened, gathering the papers she'd brought. "I've done everything I can to prove my innocence. I've shown you the evidence, laid out the case, given you every reason to doubt these rumors. But you don't want evidence. You want permission to believe the worst because it confirms what you've always thought. That's not— I'm done." The words came out flat, empty. "I'm done fighting for your trust. I'm done trying to prove I'm worth believing in. I'm done being punished for someone else's mistakes." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to decide what you want. Do you want a marriage based on truth and trust? Or do you want to stay trapped in your past, seeing betrayal in every shadow?" Elara moved toward the door. "Because I can't do this anymore. I can't keep breaking myself against your walls hoping eventually they'll come down." "Elara, wait. No, you wait. You sit here in your study and you think about what matters more, your fear or our future. And when you've decided, you let me know." She walked out, leaving him standing alone among the ruins of what they'd almost built. 3 days passed. Rowan didn't come to her, didn't send word, didn't acknowledge her ultimatum in any way. Elara spent those days in a fog. She went through motions, eating when Annie insisted, sleeping when exhaustion forced her, staring at walls and wondering how everything had fallen apart so completely. On the 4th day, chaos arrived in the form of revelation. A servant burst into the breakfast room where Elara sat pushing food around her plate. "Your Grace, someone's confessed, you need to come." Elara followed the flustered maid to the main hall, where a small crowd had gathered. In the center stood a young man she recognized from the construction site, one of the carpenters who'd worked on the school. "Tell her," Mrs. Brennan said to the man, her voice sharp. "Tell the Duchess what you told me." The carpenter twisted his cap in his hands, looking miserable. "I'm sorry, Your Grace. I'm so sorry. They paid me to spread rumors, said it was just harmless gossip, that I'd be helping with some society game. I didn't know it would— I didn't realize— Who paid you?" Elara's voice came out deadly calm. "Lady Ashworth. Lady Vivian Ashworth. She gave me £20 to tell people I'd seen you meeting secretly with a man at the school, to make it sound suspicious." The carpenter looked like he might cry. "I thought it was just rich people nonsense. I didn't know it would hurt you like this. I'm so sorry." The room erupted in murmurs. Elara stood frozen, vindication and fury warring inside her. "Where's the Duke?" she asked Mrs. Brennan. "His study, Your Grace." Elara walked there with purpose, the crowd trailing behind. She didn't knock, just threw open the door. Rowan looked up from his desk, startled by the intrusion. "You need to hear this," Elara said. The carpenter repeated his confession, his words tumbling out in a rush of guilt and fear. Rowan listened, his expression growing darker with each sentence. When the man finished, silence fell heavy as stone. "Get out," Rowan said quietly. "All of you. Now." The crowd dispersed quickly. Only Elara remained, standing across the desk from her husband, waiting. "You were right," Rowan said finally. His voice was hollow. "About everything." "Yes. Vivian did this, deliberately, maliciously." "Yes." "I should have believed you." "Yes." Elara's voice was flat, emotionless. "You should have, but you didn't." Rowan stood, moving around the desk toward her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I let my past cloud my judgment. I let fear make me stupid and cruel, and I hurt you. You destroyed me." The words came out raw. Not the rumors, not the vandalism. You. The one person I thought might actually see me, believe in me, stand with me. You're the one who broke me. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Will you?" Elara looked at him with eyes that had lost their light. "Or will the next crisis make you doubt me again? The next whisper, the next accusation, will you believe me then, or will you fall back into old patterns?" "I'll believe you, I swear. Your promises don't mean anything." She said it without cruelty, just stating fact. "You promised to give me a chance. You promised to try, and at the first test you failed. Then I'll do better. I'll prove—" "Stop!" Elara held up a hand. "I don't want your promises. I don't want your apologies. I want you to actually do something. Show me. Don't tell me." "What do you want me to do?" "Destroy her." The words came out cold and hard. Vivian did this deliberately. She vandalized the school, spread lies, tried to ruin my reputation and our marriage. She needs to face consequences. Elara. No, this isn't negotiable. She attacked me. She attacked us. And if you don't respond, if you let her walk away from this, then I'll know exactly where I stand. I'll know that even now, even with proof, you'll still protect her over me. Rowan stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "You're right. I know I'm right. No, I mean, you're right about all of it, about what this means, about what I need to do." He moved closer, his eyes intense. "I've been a coward. I let fear control me, let the past dictate the present. I chose safety over trust, doubt over belief, and I hurt the one person who deserved better. Rowan, I can't undo that. Can't take back the damage I've caused, but I can make sure everyone knows the truth. I can make sure Vivian faces consequences for what she's done. And I can prove, actually prove, with actions not words, that I choose you. Not my past. Not my fear. You." Something flickered in Elara's chest. Hope, maybe, or just exhaustion that made her want to believe him. "How?" "Tomorrow there's a gathering at the Pemberton estate. Everyone who matters will be there. Everyone who's heard the rumors, who's questioned your character, who's spread lies about our marriage." His hands found hers, gripping tight. "I'll make them see the truth, publicly, decisively. I'll destroy Vivian's credibility, and I'll make absolutely clear where my loyalty lies. And if that destroys your reputation too, your standing in society, then it does." Rowan's voice was fierce. "I'm done caring more about what they think than about what's right. I'm done protecting people who don't deserve protection." Elara searched his face, looking for signs of doubt or hesitation. She found only determination. "One more chance," she said quietly. "But this is it. If you fail, if you falter even for a second, we're done. I can't survive another betrayal. You won't have to." He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "I swear on everything I am. I won't let you down again." The next evening, they arrived at the Pemberton estate together. The gathering was already in full swing, music and laughter and the glittering spectacle of nobility at play. Conversations paused as Rowan and Elara entered. Eyes tracked their movement across the room. Vivian stood near the center, radiant in gold silk, holding court among a group of admirers. Her eyes found Rowan immediately, something calculating in her expression. Rowan walked straight to her. "Lady Ashworth," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "We need to talk." "Rowan, darling." Vivian's smile was dazzling. "How wonderful to see you. And the Duchess, of course. You vandalized my wife's school." The room went silent. Vivian's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, what?" "You spread lies about her character. You paid people to create false testimony. You orchestrated a campaign to destroy her reputation." Rowan's voice was cold as winter. "And I have proof." "That's absurd. We have a confession from the carpenter you paid. We have handwriting analysis linking you to threatening letters. We have testimony from multiple sources tracing rumors back to you." He stepped closer, towering over her. "You tried to destroy my marriage because you couldn't stand that I moved on." Vivian's face had gone white. "You can't prove—" "I can, and I will. But first, I want everyone here to know exactly who you are." Rowan turned to address the crowd. "This woman betrayed me years ago. I thought I'd forgiven her, thought we could exist in the same social circles without issue. I was wrong. She spent months systematically attacking my wife, a good woman whose only crime was marrying me." "Rowan, please." Vivian reached for his arm. He pulled away like she'd burned him. "Don't touch me. Don't speak to me. Don't come near me or my wife ever again. Because if you do, I will personally ensure you're ruined. Every connection you have, every door that's open to you, every scrap of reputation you've clung to, I will destroy all of it. You wouldn't... Try me." His eyes were glacial. "I've spent years being careful, being diplomatic, playing society's games. I'm done. You attacked my wife. You attacked my marriage. And now you'll pay for it." He turned his back on her, offering his arm to Elara. She took it, her hand trembling slightly as they walked together toward the exit. Behind them, the room exploded into shocked conversation. Vivian stood alone, her perfect facade cracked, tears streaking down her face. They didn't speak until they were in the carriage heading home. Then Elara let out a breath she'd been holding for weeks. That was... She couldn't find words. "Necessary," Rowan finished. He pulled her close, tucking her against his side. "I meant every word. She's done. And everyone knows where I stand. With me. Always with you. From now on, always." Elara let herself believe it, let herself lean into him, into the warmth and safety she'd been craving. It wasn't perfect. There would be work ahead, trust to rebuild, wounds to heal. But it was real. They arrived home to find Dr. Ashford waiting in the entrance hall, his expression urgent. "Thank heavens you're back," he said. "We've received word. Several of the school families want to re-enroll their daughters, and some of the local nobility have offered funding to expand the program. It seems your speech tonight had quite an impact." Elara felt tears prick her eyes. "Really?" "Really." The doctor smiled. "You've won, Your Grace. Both the battle and the war." But his expression turned serious as he glanced between them. "There's something else. One of the servants overheard Lord Pemberton talking tonight. He was furious about Rowan's public accusation of Vivian. He's threatened retaliation." "What kind of retaliation?" Rowan asked sharply. "I don't know, but he mentioned having information that could destroy the Halridge name entirely." Dr. Ashford's voice dropped. "Whatever it is, he's planning to reveal it at the Royal Gala next week, in front of everyone who matters." Elara felt Rowan's hand tighten on hers. She looked up at him, saw fear flash across his face before he could hide it. "What information?" she asked quietly. "I don't know." But the way he said it, the way his voice cracked slightly on the words, told her he was lying. There was something else, some secret Rowan had been keeping, and whatever it was dangerous enough to undo everything they'd just won. "What information?" Elara asked again, her voice sharper now. Rowan released her hand, moving away toward the stairs. "It's nothing. Pemberton's bluffing." "Don't lie to me." Elara followed him. "Not now. Not after everything." He stopped mid-step, his shoulders rigid. Dr. Ashford cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'll leave you two to discuss this," the doctor said, retreating quickly. Once they were alone, Elara circled around to face Rowan. "Whatever this is, we face it together. That's what you promised tonight. This is different." "How?" "Because it's my burden, not yours." We're married. Your burdens are mine. She touched his arm. Tell me. Rowan looked at her for a long moment, conflict warring across his face. Then he seemed to deflate. My father. Before he died, he made some arrangements. Financial deals that weren't entirely legal. I discovered them after he passed, along with evidence he'd been involved in bribing government officials for favorable trade contracts. Elara's stomach dropped. How bad is it? Chinez? Bad enough to destroy everything. The title, the estates, our family name. If that information becomes public, we'll lose it all. I'll be investigated, possibly charged as an accessory, even though I had nothing to do with it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought I'd buried it. I spent years paying off the right people, making sure the evidence stayed hidden. I thought it was done. His voice turned bitter. But Pemberton must have found something, some record or witness I missed. Elara's mind raced, calculating possibilities. Or Vivian told him. What? Think about it. She knew you when your father was alive. She was engaged to you, had access to your family's private affairs. She could have discovered something back then, kept it as insurance. Elara paced, her thoughts crystallizing. And now that you've destroyed her publicly, she's using Pemberton as a weapon. She can't attack you directly anymore, but she can feed information to someone who will. Rowan sank onto the stairs, his head in his hands. Either way, we're finished. Once this comes out at the Royal Gala, it won't come out. You can't stop it. Watch me. Elara sat beside him. You stood up for me tonight. You chose me over your reputation, over social standing, over everything. Now it's my turn to fight for us. Elara, you don't understand the scope of this. I understand my father built an empire by outmaneuvering people who thought they had him cornered. I understand strategy and leverage and how to turn weakness into strength. She took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Trust me. Please. Let me do this. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes. The next morning, Elara requested meetings with everyone who mattered, lawyers, accountants, even some of her father's former business associates. She spent hours locked in the library with Dr. Ashford, poring over financial records and legal documents, looking for leverage. This is impressive, Dr. Ashford said, studying the file Elara had compiled on Lord Pemberton. Where did you learn to research like this? My father. He always said knowledge is power, but specific knowledge is a weapon. Elara added another document to the growing pile. Pemberton's been living beyond his means for years. His estates are mortgaged, his investments failing. He's one bad season away from bankruptcy. So he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Elara tapped the papers. And I'm going to exploit every one of them. Over the following days, she worked tirelessly. She reached out to contacts her father had cultivated, calling in favors, gathering information. She met with Pemberton's creditors, his business partners, anyone who might have insight into his vulnerabilities. Rowan watched with something like awe. You're terrifying when you focus. Is that a compliment? The highest one I can give. He kissed her temple. I still don't know what you're planning. Good. Neither does Pemberton. 3 days before the Royal Gala, Elara made her move. She sent a carefully worded letter requesting a private meeting with Lord Pemberton, just the two of them, neutral territory, 1 hour of conversation. He agreed, probably curious about what the desperate Duchess might offer. They met at a tea house in the city, public enough to be safe but private enough for candid conversation. Pemberton arrived looking smug, his silver hair perfectly groomed, his expensive suit tailored to hide his advancing age. Duchess Halridge, he said, settling across from her. How unexpected. I assumed you'd be too busy preparing for your public humiliation to take tea. Elara smiled pleasantly. I wanted to discuss the information you plan to reveal at the gala. Did you? How delightful. He signaled for tea. I'm afraid there's nothing to discuss. The evidence speaks for itself. Does it? Because I've seen the documents you claim to have. Very interesting reading. She accepted her teacup with steady hands. Of course, I've also seen your financial records. Those are interesting too. Pemberton's smile faltered slightly. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Elara sipped her tea. You're bankrupt, Lord Pemberton. Oh, you hide it well. The expensive clothes, the grand estate, the illusion of wealth. But underneath, you're drowning in debt. Your creditors are getting nervous. Your investments have failed. You've borrowed against properties you can't afford to lose. That's none of your concern. It becomes my concern when you attack my family. Elara set down her cup carefully. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to destroy whatever evidence you have about the late Duke's financial arrangements. You're going to stand up at the royal gala and publicly apologize for spreading false rumors about my husband's family. And you're going to do it convincingly. Pemberton laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll ensure every creditor you have calls in their loans simultaneously. I'll make sure your bankruptcy becomes public knowledge. I'll destroy the illusion of wealth you've worked so hard to maintain. She leaned forward. My father taught me how to ruin men like you. It's actually easier than you'd think. You're bluffing. Am I? Elara pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. That's a complete accounting of your debts, including several you thought were private. I've already spoken to 3 of your major creditors. They're willing to give you time to recover, on my recommendation. But if I withdraw that recommendation... Pemberton opened the folder, his face going pale as he scanned the documents. How did you... Does it matter? What matters is I have power over your financial life, just like you thought you had power over mine. Elara's voice turned cold. The difference is, I'm offering you a way out. Destroy your evidence, apologize publicly, walk away, and I'll ensure your creditors give you breathing room to salvage what's left of your fortune. This is blackmail. This is business. You tried to destroy my family for whatever Vivian promised you. Money, influence, satisfaction. I'm offering you actual survival. She stood, gathering her gloves. You have until the gala to decide. Choose wisely. She left him sitting there, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the folder. Rowan was waiting when she returned home, pacing the entrance hall like a caged animal. Well? He'll comply. You're certain? I'm certain that destroying him would cost me nothing, and he knows it. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. Elara pulled off her gloves. He'll do what I asked. What did you threaten him with? The truth. His financial situation is catastrophic. All I had to do was point out how easily I could make it worse. She touched Rowan's face gently. You're safe. We're safe. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. They stood together in the entrance hall, wrapped in each other, the afternoon sun streaming through tall windows. For the first time in weeks, Elara felt like they might actually survive this. The royal gala arrived with all the pageantry and spectacle nobility could muster. The palace ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and golden fixtures, filled with everyone who mattered in society. Elara wore deep blue silk that made her look regal and untouchable. Rowan was devastatingly handsome in formal black, his hand possessive on her waist as they entered. Conversations paused. Eyes tracked their movement. The scandal was still fresh enough that people wanted to see how the Duke and Duchess would handle themselves. Lord Pemberton stood near the center of the room, looking smaller than he had at the tea house. When he saw Elara, something flickered across his face. Resignation, maybe, or bitter acceptance. The evening progressed through dinner and dancing. Elara forced herself to smile, to make pleasant conversation, to play the perfect Duchess, despite her nerves. Rowan stayed close, his presence steady and reassuring. Finally, the moment arrived. The royal herald called for attention, announcing that Lord Pemberton had requested to address the assembled guests. The room fell silent. Pemberton climbed the small platform reserved for speeches. He looked old suddenly, diminished. I stand before you tonight to correct a grave error. I've recently become aware that I was given false information regarding the Duke of Halridge and his late father's financial affairs. Information I nearly shared publicly, which would have caused irreparable harm to an innocent family. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elara felt Rowan's hand tighten on hers. I was misled by someone I trusted, Pemberton continued, his voice carrying across the ballroom. Someone who fed me lies designed to destroy the Duke's reputation. I apologize unreservedly to Duke Halridge and his wife for any distress my reckless words may have caused. They are people of integrity, and I deeply regret questioning that. He climbed down without meeting anyone's eyes. The room erupted in shocked conversation. He actually did it, Rowan breathed. I told you he would. But before they could celebrate, another voice cut through the noise. How touching. Vivian stepped forward, her dress blood red, her expression venomous. A public apology. How very noble, Lord Pemberton. Shame it's built on blackmail. Every eye turned to her. Elara's stomach clenched. The Duchess threatened him, Vivian announced, her voice ringing clear. Used her father's dirty money and business tactics to force his compliance. She's no better than the merchant trash she comes from. The room went deadly silent. Elara felt hundreds of eyes boring into her, judging, assessing. This was it, the moment where everything could still fall apart. Then Rowan stepped forward. You're right, he said calmly. My wife used her intelligence and her resources to protect our family. She outmaneuvered someone who tried to destroy us with lies. She fought back using every tool available to her. He turned to face the crowd. Some of you think that makes her less worthy of respect. You think nobility means accepting attacks with graceful silence. You think power should only be wielded by those born to it, never by those who earn it. He moved to stand beside Elara, taking her hand. But I think it makes her extraordinary. She didn't run from a fight. She didn't collapse under pressure. She saw a threat to our family, and she eliminated it. Not with violence or cruelty, with strategy and intelligence and sheer determination. His voice grew stronger, more passionate. And yes, she learned those skills from her father, a man who built something from nothing, who succeeded through brilliance rather than birthright. I'm honored to be married to his daughter, honored to stand beside a woman who has more courage and integrity than half the people in this room combined. He turned to Vivian, his expression hard. You tried to destroy us because you couldn't stand that I moved on. Because you can't accept that I found someone better than you, someone real and honest and brave, someone who fights for what she believes in instead of tearing others down. Rowan, Vivian's voice cracked. I want everyone here to understand something, Rowan said, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. My wife is the Duchess of Halridge. She has earned that title through her actions, her character, her strength. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Anyone who attacks her attacks our family, and I will respond accordingly. He looked directly at Vivian. You're no longer welcome in our home, our lives, or our social circles. Whatever we once had is dead. It's been dead for years. The only person who couldn't accept that was you. Vivian's face crumpled. For a moment she looked like she might argue, might lash out. Then she simply turned and fled, her red dress disappearing through the crowd. The ballroom remained silent for several heartbeats. Then Lady Thornwood, the elderly countess who'd supported Elara's school, began to applaud. Slowly, others joined. Not everyone, but enough. The sound built until it filled the space, echoing off the high ceilings. Elara felt tears prick her eyes. Rowan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. That was quite a speech, she whispered. I meant every word. I know. That's what makes it perfect. They stayed at the gala another hour, accepting congratulations and well wishes. Not everyone approved. Some of the older nobility still looked scandalized, still whispered about merchants and impropriety. But the tide had shifted. Elara could feel it. She was no longer the outsider desperately trying to prove herself. She was the Duchess who'd fought back and won. On the carriage ride home, exhaustion hit. Elara leaned against Rowan's shoulder, her elaborate hairstyle coming undone, her feet aching from dancing. What happens now? She asked. Now, we live our lives, build our marriage, continue your work with the school. Rowan's arm tightened around her. We survive, and we do it together. No more secrets? No more secrets, he promised. I'm done hiding things, done letting fear control me. You deserve complete honesty. Even when it's ugly? Especially then. They arrived home to find the staff waiting with news. Several more families had contacted them about enrolling daughters in the school. Additionally, 3 other nobles had expressed interest in funding similar programs in their own regions. Your movement is spreading, Dr. Ashford said with a smile. People are taking notice. Elara felt something warm bloom in her chest. All those weeks of work, of fighting, of refusing to disappear, it was actually making a difference. Over the following weeks, life settled into something approaching normal. The school reopened with twice as many students. Elara threw herself into expanding the program, working with teachers to develop curriculum and finding ways to make education accessible to even the poorest families. Rowan became her partner in this, using his connections and influence to smooth paths she couldn't navigate alone. They worked together in the library most evenings, discussing plans and strategies, their conversations flowing easily now that walls had finally come down. "You're good at this," Elara said one night, watching him review applications for teaching positions. "Good at what?" "Caring about things that matter, using your power for something beyond maintaining status." Rowan looked up from the papers. "I didn't know how until I met you. You showed me there's more to life than protecting what we have. Sometimes you have to risk everything to gain something better." "That's very philosophical." "You're a bad influence." She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. These moments of lightness still felt new, precious, evidence that they'd built something real from the ashes of their forced marriage. But not everything was resolved. Society's acceptance remained conditional, granted grudgingly by some, enthusiastically by others. And there were still those who whispered that Elara didn't truly belong, that her common blood made her unworthy of her title. The real test came on an ordinary Thursday morning. Elara was reviewing school finances when Mrs. Brennan appeared in the library doorway, her expression tense. "Your Grace, there's a visitor, Lady Vivian Ashworth. She's asking to speak with you." Elara's first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. "Show her in." Vivian entered looking nothing like the polished woman from the gala. Her dress was expensive but wrinkled, her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. She looked broken. "Thank you for seeing me," Vivian said quietly. "I almost didn't." Elara remained seated, maintaining control of the space. "What do you want?" "To apologize." Vivian's voice cracked. "Truly apologize, not the empty words I've offered before. What I did to you was inexcusable. The vandalism, the rumors, using Pemberton, all of it. I was cruel and vindictive and wrong." "Why?" Elara asked. "Why go to such lengths?" Vivian sank into a chair without being invited, suddenly looking older than her years. "Because I couldn't let go. I ruined the best thing I ever had when I betrayed Rowan, and instead of accepting responsibility, I blamed him, blamed fate, blamed everyone but myself." She met Elara's eyes. "When he married you, when I saw him actually happy with someone else, it destroyed me. I wanted you to hurt like I was hurting. So you tried to ruin my life." "Yes, and I have no excuse for it." Vivian's hands twisted in her lap. "I've spent the last weeks realizing what I've become. Someone bitter and hateful, someone who destroys things because I can't have them, someone I don't recognize anymore." Elara studied her, trying to determine if this was genuine or another manipulation. She saw only exhaustion and genuine remorse. "What do you want from me? Forgiveness?" "No, I don't deserve that." Vivian stood slowly. "I just wanted you to know that you won. Not just the social battle or the school or even Rowan's heart. You won because you're everything I pretended to be, strong, intelligent, resilient. You earned your place while I inherited mine and squandered it." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Rowan chose well. You're a remarkable woman, Duchess Halridge. I hope someday I can become even a fraction of what you are." Vivian left before Elara could respond. The library fell silent except for the ticking clock. "Well," Dr. Ashford said from the doorway where he'd apparently been listening, "that was unexpected. Was it genuine?" "I think so. Defeat has a way of forcing honesty." He moved into the room, settling into his usual chair. "The question is, what will you do with it?" "Nothing. She apologized. I heard her. That's enough." Elara returned to her papers. "I'm not interested in vengeance or continued conflict. I just want to move forward." "That's wise." "Is it? Part of me wants to make her suffer more, to really make her pay for what she did." "But you won't." "No, because I'm better than that." Elara smiled slightly. "And because I have better things to do with my time." That evening, she told Rowan about Vivian's visit. He listened silently, his expression unreadable. "How do you feel about it?" Elara asked. "Relieved, I think. That chapter's finally closed." He pulled her into his arms. "She was my past, but you're my future. That's all that matters." They stood together in the quiet study, holding each other as sunset painted the room in golden light. It wasn't dramatic or passionate, just comfortable, intimate, real. "I love you," Rowan said suddenly. Elara pulled back to look at him. What? I love you. I should have said it weeks ago, months ago maybe. But I was afraid. Afraid of being vulnerable. Afraid of trusting. Afraid of everything. His hands cupped her face. But I'm done being afraid. I love you, Elara. Your strength, your intelligence, your refusal to accept the world as it is. Everything about you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too. Even when you're stubborn and guarded and impossible. Especially then? Especially then. He kissed her, deep and lingering, pouring everything unspoken into that connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. We should probably go to dinner, Elara said. Probably. Neither of them moved. Or we could skip dinner, Rowan suggested, his voice low. That's very scandalous, Your Grace. I'm married to a scandal. Might as well lean into it. Elara laughed, the sound joyful and free. They did skip dinner, spending the evening wrapped together in Rowan's rooms, talking and touching and reveling in the rare peace they'd fought so hard to claim. Later, lying in the darkness with Rowan's arm around her waist, Elara felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness exactly, that seemed too simple for something this complex. But contentment, satisfaction, the knowledge that she'd fought for what she wanted and won. What are you thinking? Rowan murmured against her hair. That we made it. Against all odds, despite every obstacle, we actually made it. We did. I wasn't sure we would. There were moments I thought we'd destroy each other. We almost did. His arm tightened around her. But we chose differently. Chose each other. Chose to fight for this instead of against it. Again and again, Elara agreed. They fell asleep tangled together, the future spreading before them uncertain but no longer threatening. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Annie rushed into the breakfast room, her face flushed with excitement. Your Grace, you must see this. She thrust a newspaper at Elara. The headline read, Duchess Halridge's Education Initiative Inspires Royal Interest. Elara scanned the article quickly. The Queen herself had heard about the school program and expressed support for expanding it nationally. She'd pledged royal funding and asked to meet with Elara personally to discuss implementation. The Queen, Elara breathed. The actual Queen wants to meet with me. To discuss expanding your program. Rowan read over her shoulder, pride evident in his voice. You've done it. You've actually changed things on a national scale. We've done it, Elara corrected. This was never just me. It started with you, your vision, your determination, your refusal to accept the world as it was. He kissed her temple. You didn't just survive in our world, Elara. You transformed it. Dr. Ashford appeared in the doorway, grinning broadly. I take it you've seen the news? Just now. There's more. Several members of Parliament have expressed interest in education reform bills. Your school has sparked a national conversation about access and opportunity. The doctor's eyes twinkled. You've become quite influential, Your Grace. Elara felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of it. She'd started this project to prove herself, to build something meaningful, to refuse invisibility. She hadn't imagined it would grow into something that could actually change society. What do I do? She asked Rowan. What you always do. Take the opportunity and make it count. He squeezed her hand. You've got a meeting with the Queen to prepare for. Better start planning your argument. Over the following days, Elara threw herself into preparation. She compiled data on the school's success, drafted proposals for national expansion, researched similar programs in other countries. Rowan helped her refine her presentations, offering insight into how to navigate royal politics. Remember, the Queen values directness but respects protocol, he advised. Be bold but not presumptuous. That's a very fine line. You're good at fine lines. The meeting took place at the palace, in a private sitting room filled with priceless artwork and heavy history. The Queen was older than Elara expected, her silver hair piled high, her eyes sharp and assessing. But her smile was warm when Elara was announced. Duchess Halridge, I've been eager to meet you. Elara curtsied deeply. The honor is mine, Your Majesty. I've heard remarkable things about your education initiative. Sit, please, and tell me everything. They spent 2 hours discussing the school, its structure, curriculum, successes, and challenges. The Queen asked intelligent questions, pushing Elara to think deeper about implementation and sustainability. By the end, Elara felt wrung out, but exhilarated. "You've impressed me," the Queen said finally. "Your passion is evident, but more importantly, your practical approach is sound. This could actually work on a national scale. With proper funding and support, yes, Your Majesty." "You'll have both. I'm prepared to make this a royal initiative, with you as the primary architect." The Queen leaned forward. "I won't lie, Duchess. This will be controversial. There are many who believe education should remain the privilege of the wealthy. You'll face opposition." "I've faced opposition before." "So I've heard. Your resilience is admirable." The Queen's expression turned knowing. "Society wasn't kind to you initially, yet you persisted. That speaks to character." "I had no choice. Disappearing wasn't an option. There's always a choice. You chose to fight. That matters." The Queen stood, signaling the meeting's end. "I look forward to working with you, Duchess Halridge. I believe we're going to accomplish great things together." Elara left the palace feeling like she'd been granted wings. She rushed home to tell Rowan, finding him in the library where he'd been anxiously waiting. "Well?" he demanded. She said yes, to everything. Royal funding, national expansion, all of it. Elara laughed, the sound almost hysterical with relief. "I can't believe this is real." Rowan swept her into his arms, spinning her around. "I can. You're extraordinary, Elara. You always have been." They celebrated that night with a private dinner, just the two of them and Dr. Ashford. The doctor raised his glass in a toast. "To the Duchess of Halridge, who refused to be invisible and changed the world instead." "To refusing invisibility," Elara echoed, clinking her glass against theirs. But as she drank, she caught Rowan's expression, pride mixed with something else. Concern, maybe. Or awareness that everything was about to change again. "What is it?" she asked later when they were alone. "I'm proud of you, incredibly proud." Rowan pulled her close. "But I'm also aware that this work will consume more of your time, will pull you into more public life, will make you more of a target. Are you worried I can't handle it?" "No, I'm worried about losing the peace we just found. These last weeks, building this partnership between us. I don't want to lose that." Elara understood. She felt it too, the fear that success might drive them apart after they'd worked so hard to come together. "Then we don't lose it. We protect it. Make it a priority alongside everything else." "How?" "By choosing each other, again and again every day. No matter what demands come or how busy life gets, we choose this. Choose us." She took his face in her hands. "That's what marriage is, isn't it? Not the vows we spoke once, but the choice we make every morning to stay committed." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's work. Constant, difficult, essential work." She kissed him softly. "But we've survived worse. We can survive success." Rowan held her tightly, his face buried in her hair. "I love you. I need you to know that. Whatever happens, however busy life gets, that doesn't change." "I know. I love you too." They stood together in the quiet library, holding each other against the uncertainties of the future. Outside, the world was changing, doors opening, opportunities expanding, their names becoming synonymous with reform and progress. But inside, in this moment, they were just two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and chosen to build something real from the ruins of duty and expectation. It was enough. It had to be enough. And for now, wrapped in each other's arms, it was everything. The months that followed were a whirlwind. Elara traveled between the manor and London constantly, meeting with parliament members, education reformers, wealthy donors who wanted to attach their names to the growing movement. The Queen's endorsement had opened doors Elara never imagined she'd walk through, but each door led to 10 more. Each opportunity demanded more time, more energy, more of herself. She thrived on it. The work fed something deep inside her, that need to matter, to build, to change things. But it also exhausted her in ways she hadn't anticipated. "You need to rest," Rowan said one evening, finding her asleep at her desk, papers scattered around her. It was past midnight, and she'd fallen asleep mid-sentence while drafting yet another proposal. "I'm fine," Elara mumbled, trying to sit up. "You're not." He lifted her easily, carrying her toward their bedroom. "When was the last time you ate a full meal, or slept more than 4 hours?" "I don't know. There's too much to do. There will always be too much to do." Rowan set her on the bed, starting to unlace her boots. But you're no use to anyone if you collapse. I won't collapse. Elara. His voice was gentle but firm. I'm not asking. You're taking tomorrow off. No meetings, no proposals, no work. Just rest. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. Fine, tomorrow. Thank you. She fell asleep before he finished removing her boots. The next day, true to her promise, Elara tried to rest. She stayed in bed late, took breakfast in her rooms, avoided the library where work always called. But by afternoon, she was restless, unable to settle. Walk with me? Rowan suggested, appearing in the doorway. They walked through the manor gardens, the late autumn air crisp and clean, leaves crunched under their feet, the sky a brilliant blue overhead. It was peaceful in a way Elara had almost forgotten existed. I've been thinking, Rowan said as they walked, about what happens when the baby comes. Elara stopped walking. What? The baby. You're pregnant, aren't you? He studied her face. You've been exhausted, nauseous in the mornings. Your body's changing. I assumed you knew. Elara's hand went to her stomach automatically. Pregnant. Of course. The signs had been there, but she'd been too busy to notice, too focused on work to pay attention to her own body. I didn't realize. We should have the doctor confirm, but I'm fairly certain. Rowan's hand covered hers. How do you feel about it? How did she feel? Scared, excited, overwhelmed. I don't know. I wasn't planning. I knew it would happen eventually, but not now. Not when there's so much work. The work will still be there. Rowan pulled her close. But this, us, our family, this is what matters most. Elara leaned against him, letting herself feel the weight of this new reality. A baby. Their child. The heir Rowan had demanded on their wedding night, except now it felt like so much more than duty. It felt like proof that they'd built something real, something that would outlast them both. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I. You are? Absolutely. I have no idea how to be a father. My own father was brilliant at business and terrible at everything else. What if I mess this up? Elara pulled back to look at him. You won't. You're not him. Neither are you your parents. That's something we'll figure out together. He touched her stomach gently. Another thing we'll choose, every day, to be better than what came before. Dr. Ashford confirmed the pregnancy that afternoon, looking pleased and not at all surprised. About 3 months along, I'd estimate. Due in the spring. Spring, Elara repeated, trying to wrap her mind around it. That's soon. Soon enough. The doctor smiled. You'll need to slow down, Your Grace. The work you're doing is important, but so is taking care of yourself and this child. I know. I will. But slowing down proved harder than she'd anticipated. The education initiative was gaining momentum. 12 schools were now operating across the country, with plans for 30 more. Parliament was debating legislation that would make basic education mandatory for all children, regardless of gender or class. Elara's vision was becoming reality faster than anyone had expected. And with that success came renewed opposition. Conservative nobles who'd grudgingly accepted her rose again, this time with economic arguments and dire warnings about disrupting social order. They couldn't attack her character anymore. The Queen's support made that impossible, but they could attack her ideas. They're saying educated women will refuse to marry, Elara told Rowan one evening, reading through the latest editorial criticisms. That we're destroying the natural order, creating unrest. Let them say it. You're winning anyway. Am I? Because sometimes it feels like every step forward triggers 10 steps of backlash. Rowan took the papers from her hands, setting them aside. You're 4 months pregnant and you've built a national movement from nothing. I'd say you're definitely winning. I'm tired of fighting. I know. He pulled her into his arms, his hand resting on her growing stomach. But you're almost there. The legislation passes in 2 weeks. After that, the infrastructure is in place. You won't have to fight so hard to maintain it. You really think it will pass? I know it will. You've built too much support. Even the conservatives know they've lost this battle. He kissed her forehead. You did it, Elara. You actually changed the world. The legislation passed with a comfortable majority. Elara watched from the gallery as Parliament voted to make basic education mandatory and funded for all children. When the final count was announced, she had to press her hand over her mouth to keep from crying out in triumph. Afterward, there was a reception at the palace. The queen herself congratulated Elara, praising her persistence and vision. "You've accomplished something remarkable," the queen said. "Something that will affect generations. Girls born today will grow up with opportunities their mothers never had. That's your legacy." Legacy. The word settled over Elara like a mantle. She'd spent so long focused on the immediate battles that she hadn't thought about long-term impact. But looking around the reception, at the female educators and reformers who'd joined the fight, at the male politicians who'd been convinced to support it, at the fundamental shift in how society viewed women's potential, she realized what they'd built was permanent, real, lasting. "You're crying," Rowan said softly, appearing at her elbow. "I'm happy." "I know, I can tell." He handed her a handkerchief. "Come on, let's go home." They left early, returning to the manor as sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. Elara was exhausted but satisfied in a way she'd never felt before. The fight was over. She'd won. Not just survived, but fundamentally changed the system that had tried to reject her. Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Elara continued working, but at a slower pace, focusing on implementation rather than constant battles. Her pregnancy progressed obviously now, her body changing in ways that made denial impossible. "You're glowing," Lady Thornwood said when visiting one afternoon. The elderly countess had become a friend over the months, one of the few nobles who'd supported Elara from the beginning. "Motherhood suits you. I haven't done the motherhood part yet. This is just the preparation." "The preparation is half the battle." Lady Thornwood sipped her tea thoughtfully. "I remember being pregnant with my first. Terrifying and exhilarating simultaneously." "That's exactly it." Elara shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. "I keep thinking about all the ways I could fail. What if I'm not good at this? What if I can't balance the work with being a mother?" "You'll figure it out. You always do." Lady Thornwood set down her cup. "Can I tell you something? When you first arrived in society, I thought you wouldn't last a month. You seemed too earnest, too vulnerable. The wolves would eat you alive." "They tried." "They did, but you didn't let them. You fought back with intelligence and determination instead of playing by their rules. You made your own rules." The Countess smiled. "That's what your daughter will learn from you. You think it's a girl?" "I know it is. Call it intuition from someone who's had 6 children." Lady Thornwood stood to leave. "And she'll grow up in a world you helped create, one where being female isn't a limitation. That's the greatest gift you could give her." After she left, Elara sat in the drawing room thinking about that. A daughter. Growing up with opportunities Elara hadn't had. Able to learn, to dream, to become whatever she wanted without fighting every step of the way. It made everything, all the battles, all the exhaustion, all the pain, worth it. As winter deepened, Elara's pregnancy became more challenging. She was tired constantly, her back ached, and moving took effort. But she also felt connected to the life growing inside her in ways she hadn't anticipated. This child was real now, kicking and shifting, making her presence known. "She's strong," Rowan said one evening, his hand on Elara's stomach, feeling the baby move, just like her mother. "Or stubborn, like her father." "Probably both." He kissed Elara's temple. "I love you, both of you." "We love you too." They spent the winter preparing, converting a room into a nursery, interviewing potential nurses, reading every book they could find about infant care. Rowan proved unexpectedly anxious about the details, insisting on the safest crib, the best medical care, contingency plans for every possible complication. "You're worrying too much," Elara told him. "I'm worrying exactly the right amount. The baby will be fine. I'll be fine." "You don't know that." His voice cracked slightly. "Women die in childbirth. Babies die. Things go wrong." Elara pulled him close, understanding his fear. His mother had never fully recovered from bearing him. The trauma had shaped his entire childhood, the guilt of being the cause of her suffering. "I'm not your mother. This isn't the same situation. I can't lose you." "You won't. I'm too stubborn to die. You said so yourself." She made him look at her. "We're going to be fine, all 3 of us. Trust that." Spring arrived with gentle warmth and blooming flowers. Elara grew enormous, her body stretching to accommodate the life inside her. Moving became an effort. Sleeping was nearly impossible. She spent her days reading, planning for the future, and trying not to think about the ordeal ahead. Then one morning, pain woke her before dawn, sharp, insistent contractions that stole her breath. "Rowan," she gasped. He was up immediately, calling for servants, sending for the doctor and midwife. The household erupted into controlled chaos. The hours that followed blurred together in waves of pain and effort. Elara had known childbirth would be difficult, but nothing prepared her for the reality. The overwhelming intensity, the way her body seemed to be tearing itself apart, the exhaustion that made every breath feel like climbing a mountain. Rowan stayed with her despite protocol, saying he shouldn't. He held her hand, wiped her forehead, whispered encouragement when she wanted to give up. "I can't do this," Elara gasped during a particularly brutal contraction. "Yes, you can. You've done harder things." "Name one." "You survived marrying me." Despite everything, she laughed. Then another contraction hit and laughter turned to screaming. Finally, after hours that felt like days, the midwife said, "One more push, Your Grace, just one more." Elara gathered what was left of her strength and pushed. The pain peaked, unbearable, then suddenly released as a baby's cry filled the room. "A girl," the midwife announced, her voice warm with satisfaction. "A healthy baby girl." They cleaned the baby quickly and placed her on Elara's chest. She was tiny, red-faced, absolutely perfect. Elara stared down at her daughter through tears, overwhelmed by the rush of love that threatened to drown her. "She's beautiful," Rowan breathed, his own eyes wet. "She's perfect." "Of course she is. Look who her parents are." Elara's joke came out weak but genuine. "What should we name her?" They'd discussed names for months without deciding, but looking at her now, Elara knew. "Catherine, after my grandmother. She was the only person in my family who believed girls could be more than ornaments." "Catherine Halridge." Rowan touched his daughter's tiny hand, his finger immediately grabbed by impossibly small fingers. "Welcome to the world, little one. Your mother's been preparing it for you." The next days passed in a haze of exhaustion and joy. Elara recovered slowly, her body healing from the trauma of birth. Catherine proved to be a demanding baby, crying often, sleeping little, needing constant attention. But Elara didn't mind. Every time she held her daughter, she felt that overwhelming rush of love mixed with fierce protectiveness. "She's going to change everything," Elara told Rowan one night as they watched Catherine sleep in her cradle. "Not just for us, but for everyone. She'll grow up in a world where being female doesn't limit her, where she can learn and dream and become whatever she wants. Because of you. Because of all of us. Everyone who fought for this." Elara leaned against him. "But yes, a little because of me. I helped break down some walls. You demolished them." Rowan's arm tightened around her. "Our daughter will never know what it was like before. She'll think education and opportunity are normal, not revolutionary. That's your gift to her." A few weeks after Catherine's birth, Elara received an unexpected visitor. Vivienne appeared at the door, asking if she could see the new Duchess and baby. "Should I send her away?" Mrs. Brennan asked, her tone making clear what she thought of the idea. Elara considered. Part of her wanted to refuse, to keep Vivienne away from her family. But another part, the part that had won all her battles by refusing to act from fear, was curious. "Show her to the drawing room. I'll be down shortly." She found Vivienne standing near the windows, looking at the gardens. The woman seemed smaller somehow, less threatening than she'd been months ago. She turned when Elara entered, her expression nervous. "Thank you for seeing me," Vivienne said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either." Elara remained near the door, maintaining distance. "Why are you here?" "I heard about the baby. I wanted to congratulate you." Vivienne twisted her hands together. "And to thank you." "Thank me for not destroying me completely. After everything I did, you had every right to ruin me. But you didn't. You let me fade away quietly instead of crushing me publicly." Vivienne's voice was soft. "I don't deserve that mercy, but I'm grateful for it." Elara studied her, trying to determine if this was genuine. "What are you doing now?" "Teaching, actually. At a small school in the countryside. Nothing prestigious, but the work is meaningful. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that matters beyond maintaining my social position." Vivienne smiled slightly. "One of your schools, ironically. I heard they were desperate for teachers and applied under my mother's maiden name. They don't know who I am." "Do you like it?" "I do. The girls remind me of what I could have been if I'd focused on becoming better instead of appearing perfect. She moved toward the door, preparing to leave. I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know that what you built, it's changing lives. Even mine. After she left, Elara stood in the drawing room thinking about transformation. How people could change, how systems could shift, how the world bent toward those brave enough to push it. Vivian would never be a friend, but maybe she didn't need to be an enemy anymore either. Was that who I think it was? Rowan asked, appearing in the doorway. Yes. She came to congratulate us and thank me for not destroying her. Did you accept the thanks? I did. She's teaching now, at one of our schools. Elara turned to him. She's different. Actually different this time, not performing. People can change when they're forced to. Rowan pulled her close. Though I prefer the people who choose to be better from the start. Like us? We weren't better from the start. We were disasters. He kissed her. But we chose to become better. That's what matters. Summer arrived with warm days and long evenings. Catherine was 3 months old now, growing rapidly, her personality emerging. She was curious, demanding, already strong-willed in ways that made Elara both proud and slightly terrified. The education initiative continued expanding. Over 50 schools were now operating, with more opening constantly. The legislation had created infrastructure for funding and oversight, making the system sustainable beyond Elara's personal involvement. Other reformers had stepped up, taking on leadership roles, pushing the movement in new directions. You did it, Dr. Ashford said one afternoon, joining Elara in the gardens where she played with Catherine. Built something that will outlast all of us. We did it. I couldn't have done this alone. No, but you started it. You refused to accept limits others took for granted. You fought when everyone said you should disappear. The doctor smiled. That's real courage, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear win. Elara looked down at Catherine, who was grabbing at flowers with chubby hands, delighted by colors and textures. I want her to never know what it's like to be told she can't do something because of who she is. I want her to grow up assuming she's capable until proven otherwise. She will. You've made sure of that. That evening, the family gathered for dinner. Elara and Rowan, Catherine in her nurse's arms, Dr. Ashford, who'd become family through sheer persistence, even Lady Thornwood, who'd been visiting for the week. It was a small gathering, but full of warmth and laughter, the kind of scene Elara had never imagined when she first arrived at this cold manor. A toast, Rowan said, raising his glass, to Elara, who refused to disappear and change the world instead. To refusing to disappear, everyone echoed. Elara felt tears prick her eyes. I have a toast too. To all of us. To choosing each other, choosing to be better, choosing to build something real instead of accepting what we were given. To choosing, they agreed. After dinner, Rowan and Elara walked through the gardens together, Catherine sleeping peacefully in Elara's arms. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the air sweet with the scent of roses. Do you ever think about that first night? Elara asked. When you told me to produce an heir and disappear? Rowan flinched. I try not to. I was cruel. You were afraid. There's a difference. She shifted Catherine to a more comfortable position. But I think about it sometimes, about how far we've come. From strangers who resented each other to partners, to people who choose each other every day. Elara stopped walking, turning to face him. To love. Real, complicated, hard-won love. The best kind. Rowan touched Catherine's sleeping face gently. She'll never know what it was like before. The cold marriage, the distance, the walls between us. She'll just grow up seeing parents who work together, who respect each other, who built something real. Good. Let her think that's normal. Let her expect that from her own relationship someday. They continued walking, 3 people moving through a garden that had witnessed so much transformation. The same walls, the same grounds, but everything fundamentally different. What do you want her to know, Rowan asked. When she's older, what do you want to tell her about all this? Elara thought about that. I want her to know that the world will try to limit her, that people will tell her she can't do things, that she should stay small and quiet and invisible, and I want her to know that she should refuse, fight, build her own path instead of accepting someone else's limitations. That's what you did. That's what we did, together. She looked at him. I couldn't have done this alone. You stood beside me when it mattered most. You chose me over your fears. You made it easy by being impossible to ignore. Rowan pulled her close, careful of the baby between them. You're the strongest person I've ever known, Elara. Our daughter's lucky to have you as a mother. And as a father who learned that strength includes vulnerability, that power means building others up, not keeping them down. Elara leaned against him. We're going to mess this up sometimes. Parenting, I mean. We'll make mistakes. Probably, but we'll do it together. Keep choosing each other. Keep choosing to be better. She looked down at Catherine. And we'll teach her to do the same. They stood together in the garden as twilight deepened, a family built from duty and obligation, but transformed through choice and love. Behind them, the manor glowed with warm light from windows no longer cold and empty. Ahead, the future spread out uncertain, but no longer threatening. Inside, servants prepared rooms for evening, the household running smoothly under Mrs. Brennan's firm but fair management. In the library, books waited to be read, knowledge ready to be shared. Throughout the country, schools stood where none had existed before, girls learning who might otherwise have remained invisible. And in that moment, holding her daughter while her husband's arms surrounded them both, Elara felt something she'd never expected when she first arrived at this place as a frightened bride with no idea what awaited her. She felt home, not because of the building or the title or the wealth that surrounded her, but because of what they'd built together. A partnership based on truth instead of pretense, strength instead of fear, choice instead of obligation. I love you, she said softly. I love you too, both of you. Rowan kissed her hair. Thank you. For what? For refusing to disappear, for fighting, for being stubborn and brilliant and impossible. His voice cracked slightly. For saving me from myself. We saved each other. Elara turned her face up to kiss him properly. That's what love does, when it's real. Catherine stirred between them, making soft baby noises. They pulled apart, both laughing quietly at the interruption. She's going to be a handful, Rowan predicted. With us as parents. Absolutely. Elara smiled down at her daughter. But she'll be extraordinary. She'll change things just like we did. Maybe even more. The world won't know what hit it. Good. Let it be surprised. Elara started walking back toward the house, her family beside her. Let it learn that underestimating people is always a mistake. That strength comes in forms you don't expect. That the women everyone wanted to ignore and dismiss and erase from history are the ones who end up reshaping it entirely. They entered the manor together, passing from the garden's twilight into the warm glow of home. Behind them, the door closed softly, sealing out the darkness. Inside, everything was light and warmth and the promise of tomorrow. Elara had entered this house as a commodity, a transaction, a woman purchased to fulfill a duty. She'd been told to disappear after serving her purpose, to fade into the background like all the forgettable duchesses before her. Instead, she'd become unforgettable, had changed laws and opened doors and created opportunities for thousands who came after, had transformed a cold business arrangement into genuine partnership and love, had proven that sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply refusing to be invisible. She'd survived. Not just survived, thrived. Taken the cage they'd built for her and dismantled it entirely, using the pieces to build something better. And as she climbed the stairs to put her daughter to bed, Rowan's hand warm in hers, Elara knew with certainty that this was just the beginning. Catherine would grow up strong and capable, would take the foundation her mother built and push it further. Other girls across the country would do the same, each generation standing on the shoulders of the last, reaching higher. The world had tried to make Elara disappear. Instead, she'd made sure no woman after her would ever have to. That was legacy. That was love. That was triumph. And it was enough.